Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
It's got Star Trek. Episode 36. The most and least funny attempts at humor in Star Trek.
I do not understand.
You don't know what a joke is?
Of course I do. It is a witticism, a gag, a bon mot, a fluctuation of words concluding with a trick ending.
That's the dictionary meaning. I'm talking about humor, fun. Do you know what funny is?
Star Trek fans they always expect a gift when going to a convention. You heard about this? You read about this one?
I went to a convention and I did not get a gift.
So yeah, but, I mean, they always expect a gift when going to a convention. Yeah. They call it the Enterprise.
Oh no.
Wait, okay. Did you come up with that yourself, or is that from one of those books?
I didn't come up with any of these tonight.
The
I figured
Enterprise.
I would spare people of.
It's one of those jokes where it's not entirely clear that it works. Does it work? The Enterprise.
Yeah, because you enter and you get a prize for it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hardly knew
Would you
her.
say it's more? It should be called an entrance prize.
I don't know. It just seems like there may be some grammatical inconsistencies.
They call it the prize for entering. The entrance prize. The entrance prize. What do you call it when you go to the hockey game or whatever and they give you a hockey stick or whatever, or it's free shirt night, or you know what I'm saying? I don't know what they call those.
You mean, what do you call it?
Like,
I've never been to a hockey game.
Like, do you call it do you call it an enterprise?
You do not. That's why I think the joke does not work. I think it fails.
Oh damn!
No, it's not. It's not a criticism to Dan.
No, I know. I don't take it as a criticism.
Dan was looking up, bad Star Trek jokes since the topic of today's podcast.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. It's not
humor.
your joke. I forgot. It just seems like the kind of joke you would make up. That's not a criticism either.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But you know what's more unfortunate? I heard that Ricardo Montalban. I heard that Ricardo Montalban. I heard that. This is really unfortunate. What's really unfortunate? That's really unfortunate. But you know what's more unfortunate? What's more unfortunate? Have you heard this news? Ricardo Montalban struggled to find acting roles after Star Trek 2. Did you hear about this one? Did you read this? Read about this in the news?
I did not.
That he struggled to find acting roles after Star Trek 2? Yeah, they said the reason was that nobody wanted to hire an ex-con.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, see, that one works.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yes. Separate from there are two ways to adjudicate humor. Humor is a subjective enterprise, at least in a lot of ways.
Enterprise.
And one way to sort of think about and critique and comprehend humor is on how you react to it, whether you laugh or chortle or are amused. And then completely separate to that is, does it work structurally? Does it make sense? Right? Mm-hmm. And so you can laugh really hard at a joke that does not make any sense. And you can also not laugh at all at a joke that is structurally sound, like the one you provided two very good examples of each of those things. Because I did laugh at the Enterprise joke, even though I don't think it worked.
Yeah. What makes things funny? That's a good point. I don't know. As long as
I think Ricardo Montalban thinks things funny.
The thing that's great about this is every time Dan talks, I don't know if he's about to start into another joke.
I know.
I'm steeling myself to sort of understand what's going on.
Because he kind of tricked me the first two times, and then
yeah.
Well, he's a trickster.
I was like, wait a minute, he's doing a joke.
He's doing a joke. He's Danny Jokes.
Yeah, and once again, I can't take credit for any of these tonight, just because these are just some trick jokes I've heard around the long way.
Let's not lay any blame at Dan's.
Oh, This is more traditional. See, I'm setting you up too. What do all Star Trek captains have in common?
They're all captains.
It's true. That is a correct answer, but it's not the answer we're looking for. How would you know that? That's not your fault. That you answered it correctly, but that's not the answer I wanted.
It's in the premise to the question.
Yeah, but I mean, you still answered it correctly. But anyways.
All right.
It's just when sometimes you take a test and you answer something. It doesn't happen that often, but it has the kind
of thing I would argue with the professor.
Yeah,
or the teacher about.
I had a test once where the teacher said how if you were like on ice or something with no friction or whatever, that one of those questions, how would you move? And my answer, I wrote fart a lot. and he counted it wrong.
Which is horrifying.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes, it was. And the reason he counted it wrong, because he said he thought I was being a smartass. I'm like, but it's right. He's like, yeah,
you
but
can be both.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like, I'm right, you know?
That should be treasured. That sort of attitude should be that. And creativity should be treasured.
That's the problem
in
with teachers.
in our children.
He just didn't like me. He hated me.
Well, anyway, welcome to...
wait.
You haven't said the punchline yet. So first I'm going to say welcome to the It's Got Star Trek podcast. You'll have to continue listening to hear the punchline. It's coming right up after this. But yeah, this episode is on humor in Star Trek. And that's partly why Dan has been regaling us with these humorous constructions, humorous verbal constructions.
Wouldn't it be fucked up if I told the joke and then we decided not to tell it until the end of the episode?
Yeah, I honestly don't remember the beginning. Something about Star Trek captains. What do all Star Trek captains have in common?
That's right.
In addition to being captains.
Mm-hmm. Jesse, you got an answer?
No, I have no answer for this.
Well, guys, they all have 3 ears. A left ear, a right ear, and a final frontier. That was a reaction. That counts as a joke because you reacted.
Why is the front ear the final ear?
It's just because it fits in with like Final Frontier. It's a joke. There's always some suspension of disbelief when you have a joke. I know they still have to make it. I will admit that that Enterprise was kind of a stretch, and they fucked with grammar and how words work in order to force a joke. But the Final Frontier, I don't know. I'm not really concerned with why the Frontier is the final one.
Well, I want to take this
I guess that's a good point, though. Why would it be the Final Frontier?
It should be the initial ear.
Like, nobody has a ear on the front of their head.
That's the only front ear.
That's the first one you get to.
Okay, well, I guess it's a fair point, Jesse.
And not all the captains were all about the final frontier, which I presume we'll take it in the metaphor. We'll take its meaning as the metaphor towards the unknown, the final frontier, right? But that sometimes they're just hanging out doing political shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're trying to get home. Like in Voyager.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll take this opportunity to thank everybody out there in the audience for sending in a tremendous amount of comments and ideas when we put out a solicitation asking for people's thoughts on the most funny and least funny attempts at humor in the Star Trek franchise. And so that's what we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be going over some of those with a few caveats. This is obviously not comprehensive, right? Because there's
a lot of Star Trek.
There's a lot of Star Trek. Almost 800 or over 800. I forget how many hours now. I've lost track. But there's a lot of Star Trek. And a lot of Star Trek humor is subtle or long form or character based or visual. These are all difficult to to recount and discuss on an audio format.
But we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna have a good time at this podcast.
Plus, these are not our necessarily our. We're gonna go through what you all thought were the best. What you all thought were the worst, or at least some of y'all, as well as I think the most fun part of the conversation will be towards the end of the podcast when we discuss the scenes that people thought were either listed as the best or the worst, right? So that was interesting. There was a lot of people who would say like, this scene was the worst, stupidest thing ever.
Crossover there.
Yeah, and then other people were like, this was the funniest thing ever. So, but these are not necessarily our opinions, and we'll state as much as we go along.
Some people appeared to be racist.
Oh yeah, and we'll talk about that too briefly. We're not going to try to bring you all down.
Wouldn't be the internet without.
Yeah, it's.
I don't even want to say something like that because there's evidence that goes on about the internet, but saying it, I don't want to normalize it. It's fucking bullshit.
Exactly. But at the same time, if you don't talk about it, then are you ignoring it? It's that It's that difficult threshold of determining whether something's worth talking about or not, or just ignoring it. What's the better outcome for society, which is a great way to start a podcast about fucking humor and
because even when asking people about humor in Star Trek,
I'm sorry, I brought everybody.
No, it wasn't you.
No,
it's because I don't have any sense of humor.
No, it's the internet, man.
It's the internet,
man. What are you gonna do, man?
Yes, man. It's the internet, man. This is my funny voice. I'm talking like this now.
That is a funny voice.
It is a funny voice. It's not Dan's one of his most
It's not the funniest.
That's not like a top 10 tier.
It's not like the
funny
worm
voice.
voice.
Maybe I shouldn't try new material on the night that's supposed to be extra funny.
I don't know.
It's the worm voice. Gonna go eat my worms.
Save it for a regular funny episode.
Tried and true. And the best part about the wine voice is that we've been referencing it consistently for months now.
And no one's heard it.
Even though that's the origin of the worm voice is locked away in one of our bank episodes, one of those secret episodes we recorded in case we were bored one week and decided not to record, but that you needed content.
Oh, wow. I was going to say, like, I don't even remember which episode it came from, but now that you said that, I know which episode it came from.
Now
It's
you
the,
know.
It's the unaired one, because I didn't even remember the origin, so it's something
I didn't
else, huh?
remember until he told me, but yeah.
Lore, podcast
Because
lore.
I never remember. We do these things, and then I don't remember what happens, and, you know.
Yeah, that's a good way to go through life.
It's less of a bummer.
It's like I can't predict the future, and I have no recollection of the past.
I don't remember
Yeah.
some of the stuff I say.
I'm a droplet of oil skirting through the surface tension on the top of a
I just hope that
child's
a lot of it gets
pool.
edited out.
It's only weird when you see the person and they just, like, treat you all weird, like you did something really off the wall and not cool.
Which
And
person? What are you talking about?
You know, when you don't remember your past and then you go up to like
Oh,
a
yeah,
person and
yeah.
that person like doesn't even tell you, do you remember what you did? They just like, they don't even reference it because it was too weird, but you can tell by the way they're talking to you that like,
and you're like,
really-
oh, wait a minute. Oh, shit.
Or the people who come up to you and they know your full name and a great number of details and you have no recollection.
Yeah, that's happened before. You're like,
Where do you know them from?
oh man, I'm feeling horrible right now because I'm thinking a very bad moment that happened. It was just so embarrassing for myself and I made it worse and I just
it's
wouldn't
usually
drop
like
it.
somebody's parent or something, and you don't recognize them, and you're like, what the hell is that?
You better recognize, man.
All right, so
So-and-so's mom.
let's start out. So, as I said before, the plan is we'll talk about a few of the what the listeners out there suggested were their favorite clips. Then we'll move on to what people thought were the worst clips, and then finally wrap it up with the ones that were a little bit more controversial, where people were from both sides were suggesting that. So the first clip. I'm going to go ahead and let you guess which episode this is from. Let's see if either of you can remember.
He will need to be fed once a day. He prefers feline supplement number 25.
I understand.
Oh, yeah. That's from
And he will
Phantos.
require water.
That's right.
And you must provide him with a sandbox. And you must talk to him.
Number 25.
Tell him he is a pretty cat. And a good cat.
I will feed him.
Perhaps that will be enough.
Yeah, I like how Worf is all serious about it at first. I remember when he's holding the cat too. He's like, yes, yes.
But isn't he holding? He's all holding it out
Yeah.
away from him, all awkwardly in that way that people hold cats that don't like cats.
It's like he's strangling a person, except he's holding a cat under the shoulders, like in its torso. And I don't know how they got that cat actor to like stay still for that long.
Opium.
yeah.
Not every cat will do that.
No.
Most cats.
Cats-
won't.
Opioids,
cats aren't-
Valium, or
Cats don't do
opioids.
What was it? Peanut butter and Mr. Ed and a cattle prod or something? I don't know how they got him to.
Well, on Mr. Ed, I heard peanut butter, or some people said electric shocks.
Yeah.
I tend to think probably peanut butter was.
Let's just hope.
This is an example of the kind of stuff that's sort of based around like a character that's super serious all the time, and he's in an absurd situation, and then we laugh at it because we like the character and he's being goofy. Or that he's been thrust into this like ridiculous thing where he's got to be all he's being Worf, and he's like yes, and then he starts it's like, oh, of course Worf is allergic to cats, like
Yeah,
that's why he doesn't have a cat.
Right. He's this really strong warrior with all these backup organs and stuff like this, but like cats, bring him down.
that's it.
And that's always funny.
He's
Like
got
calling a big guy
allergies.
tiny. And like I was saying, he's holding this cat up and he's all kind of like solemn and serious. Like, okay, sure, yes. Like he's like trying to take it seriously, but you can tell he's uncomfortable, but he's trying to take it like seriously. But then Data gets more and more absurd with his request until Worf's eventually just like, fuck this. Okay, man.
I also like how at the beginning of the scene, And so, we only had a brief clip of it there, but when Worf comes in and Data basically is saying, in the episode, what's happening is Data's having weird nightmares and waking dreams, and he is afraid that he might injure Spot. So he wants to give...
That made me sad to think about.
Yeah, and so, it's a very touching scene in that sense, and I think what makes it more so is not just Data, but when Worf comes in and Data says, I'd like you to watch him for me, Worf says, "Your animal," like as in this
right.
honorable thing, how you can tell how important Worf understands a person's animal is to
Which is
them.
why he's all solemn and serious at first.
Initially.
But you can still tell he's uncomfortable.
Well, once
initially,
and that's before he even has to touch the cat. But then once Data hands him the cat is when he starts getting.
Don't they have crazy beast pets on Klingon planets?
Yeah, they're like targs and shit. I think they would mostly have a
Yeah.
hunting targ or something to hang out with.
But it may not be the kind of thing that just hangs out at your house and it's not one of those kind of pets. It's
the other thing,
it's a hunting beast.
I think the cat. One reason why the cat joke also works with Worf is because it is in some ways a subtle reminder, a subtle reference to the fact that Klingons, again, who are these huge grand warriors, and they like to hang out with crazy targ creatures and do all this fighting
and eat bok or cock.
Gok.
Sorry, I didn't mean.
But they also are they also can't deal with tribbles, right? And so tribbles and cats share. They're not the same, obviously, but they share that sort of. They're small, they're furry. Most people would consider them very kind of cute and cuddly, but the Klingon is like, just sort of revolted by it.
I just got the image of H. John Benjamin talking about eating tribbles.
Yeah,
wasn't that him? He was like, that was that episode.
Yeah, that didn't come up in. There's a lot, but by the way, there's a lot that did not come up. A lot of people's comments did not include things that I would have maybe thought of. But again, there's so much in Star Trek. But that's one of the ones that I thought might have been one of the more controversial ones. That short trek. It's called The Trouble with Edward. And if you haven't seen the short treks, I think it's a great one. H. John Benjamin being really weird and funny, playing this Starfleet officer who's kind of fiddling around with tribbles. But when you read online, some people love it. I'm in the love it camp, but a lot of people just can't stand it. They think it's terrible.
And I'm not gonna downplay anyone's opinion on anything, because everyone has an opinion, and it's not really my place to tell them they're wrong. I think though, for me, when I saw that episode, initially I was like, whoa, they're really going out there in this one. They're really traveling, they're going on a trek through
Final Frontier.
They go into the final
frontier.
The frontier, the exit prize. But so it was kind of a journey away from what you'd expect from Star Trek. And so initially I hit that, and then when I felt that, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, this is how this is going to be, and I just let my mind sort of let go of any kind of concept that I was come to expect of Discovery at that point. And that's the thing is I think there's problems when someone tries to keep their expectations boxed in around what's surrounding it. And I can understand why people do that. It's part of how people make order of things and that kind of thing. But just for me, I really enjoyed it. And I think, if someone's held on to the idea of all Discovery should be expected to be a certain way or that kind of thing, then I can see why people might have an issue enjoying it. But then with that said, I also want to say I don't want to downplay anyone's opinion, because it could be that, it could be anything else, other reason. Maybe maybe they're just like, I love Star Trek to be whatever, I just happen to think it was dumb.
Well, and especially when it comes to humor is difficult precisely because people are so fickle about it. And I don't mean fickle in a pejorative way. I am also fickle about it. You have flavors of humor that you're into and flavors that you're not into. So you are often taking a risk as a writer, a TV writer. Unless you're, doing a comedic sitcom, even then is a risk, but at least that's theoretically your job. In a show like Star Trek, where humor is a consistent component, but it isn't the driving force in theory, right? We're watching a sci-fi show. The humor is salt sprinkled on or sugar, whatever, it's like a sort of a bonus. So you do take a risk. And also as we'll find with some of these clips, humor also does change, throughout time as time goes on.
Yeah.
Some of it holds up, some of it doesn't so much. So that can be an issue. So whatever. It's like whatever you're into is fine.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of change, it also can change your perception of the character suddenly. Very like if you're used to a character never being funny and suddenly they're funny, that right there that's a threshold sort of moment of like, oh, they're capable of this. This is their
threshold.
Oh yeah, we did.
Which is that'll bring up the point. Another point we want to make is
that was a threshold moment for
Voyager. Voyager Threshold is a famous episode, but we didn't include unintentionally funny. Right? There's a lot of Star Trek that, and we plenty of people sent in comments along these lines of things that they found funny, but that were unintentionally funny. I think that deserves its own episode somewhere down the line, because unintentionally funny is different. I think, but for the purposes of this show, this particular episode, I think we're going to focus on the funny,
yeah,
or what was intended to be funny.
So yeah, and so basically, I was just trying to say that when your perception of a character changes that drastically, that suddenly, because suddenly, they're expressing they're making me feel things I haven't felt about them before. But that can be frightening and scary and make you want to block it out and not accept it.
And rewarding, as in the case of course, Worf. As Worf was not initially a funny character,
right?
You had to, and even if they tried to be, his character had to be built up to the point where then a joke like this joke with Data's cat, would actually make any sense. The humor is there, the timing. Michael Dorn and Brent Spiner both have great timing, so the scene plays out very well. I think anybody watching this cold out of the blue, they would understand the humor going on here. But this is a Star Trek fan joke, right? The Worf and Data spot the cat. You will have wanted to see the show and grown with the characters to really appreciate the full breadth of this particular
Future
show.
Perfect, another name of an episode.
But I think that's
just what you did as a
lot of humor in Star Trek, or stuff that people think is funny. It comes from that.
Yeah.
It comes from people that are very familiar with the show and like the show and like the characters and aspects about the characters. So it's there's a lot of in jokes.
Absolutely, yeah. Warp core breach jokes and stuff. Like when there's like a drink called the Warp Core Breach.
Wow.
Which is that's like having a drink called the 9/11.
Oh God! what was the line Geordi gave from All Good Things where he was like,
Let's get another round of Titanics over here. We're thirsty.
All Good Things. I don't remember the line, but it was like
it's got a bunch of ice in it.
Geordi was met up with.
I like my Jonestowns shaken, not stirred.
Where Geordi met up with Picard on Harvey Picard on the planet, and he was like, "Oh, we got a warp core breach or some other damn thing." I don't remember what you know what I'm talking about.
No.
Come on,
I mean, I kind of do, but
There's so many.
I wasn't
warp
fully
core
paying attention.
breaches.
Yeah, I know you weren't paying attention.
I was confused by what you were saying.
I was trying to say it, but the reason you were confused is because you only caught it in bits as you guys were talking over it, which is fine. You can talk over
I was
me.
trying to listen to both of y'all.
I'm sorry, Professor. All right, why don't we move to the next?
Just don't say I'm the one who's being confusing. That's all I'm saying.
No, I didn't say you were being confusing. I was saying I was confused. Mm-hmm. Two different things. I put the onus on myself.
You could. It's okay if you want to say what. Can you repeat that?
I didn't say I was confused because you're a piece of shit.
You could have. It's okay to say like, can you repeat that, please? That's okay. I'll appreciate that. It's just when I say something, and I'm not talking about you guys. I'm reminded of something someone else did, where I'll say something and they'll go along with what I'm saying, and then after about a minute of me talking with them about it, they're just like, you can tell they had no idea what I said, but they didn't think to say, can you repeat that? They just wanted to like seem like they were in on the joke, and they didn't want to feel whatever.
This is a common ailment when you have the
people are
degree of
really
intelligence and sophistication as someone like yourself.
That's right, I'm smart and pooping. Future Vineyard, LaForge, Captain Picard to the bridge. Captain, we've got a problem with the warp core, or the phase inducers, or some other damn
Was
thing.
that All Good Things?
Captain Picard to the bridge. Captain, we've got a problem with the warp core, or the phase inducers, or some other damn thing. Geordi! Yeah, that was All Good Things.
All right, so
I repeated it because I've mispronounced inducers, and I'm...
Yeah.
It sucks when you mispronounce things.
It's okay. It's okay to mispronounce or to mispronounce. Whatever that is.
Nothing can possibly go wrong.
All right, next clip.
Oh, you're going to enjoy this.
Looks delicious. What is it?
Blood soup. I don't usually eat this well, but I promised your captain an exceptional meal.
What are these, little chunks?
The essence of the male. Chopped, seasoned.
I love that little and then the crunching of the toast.
Crunching of the toast.
So you all remember what that's from?
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, that's another one we talked about.
It's Desert Crossing.
Desert Crossing Enterprise, Season 1, Episode 24.
Yep.
The Great Clancy Brown.
And that was the old I'm a straight male afraid to eat balls.
Yeah. And we discussed that. I forget which episode of the podcast. It was a few weeks back, but how it was odd that the humans had advanced in all these various ways, about being open-minded, and Archer was always going on about how great the humans were, how they weren't perfect, but they were getting there. But he was still weirded out by eating some balls.
Yeah, they still like steak, and they don't want to eat balls.
Yeah, and this wasn't even like the early 90s. Yeah, this was in the 2000s.
This was 2001.
Yeah, so it's getting a little on the edge. It's kind of like...
Or 2002.
Was that
maybe.
before Andrew Zimmern was eating all those balls on?
Yeah,
that was before Andrew Zimmern was eating all his balls.
It was. Andrew Zimmern did a mitzvah for the world.
He did.
Going around eating some fat little beetles and stuff.
I don't know if I ever remember him directly eating semen, but that Fear Factor show, like I think
semen? Is that a thing you can do?
They on Fear Factor. I don't think they aired it, but I think
you can do it.
I think it was something Joe Rogan was talking about, how like he feels what killed the show is when they had them drink donkey cum.
Yeah.
And they were drinking jugs of it, and it never
a show
actually
killer.
And
That's
it,
a show
yeah,
killer.
And it never actually aired or something. I don't know.
Donkey killer too, probably.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I think he was talking about how they were like it would zap it and it would. Never mind. But
oh my man. Oh god.
But 2001. This is on the edge. This is like when they release a new game for the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo has just come out.
Yeah,
It's like,
Well, and it was Enterprise, which is a show I'm a big fan of. I really enjoy it, but it did sometimes have a little trouble because they were trying to straddle the line between quote unquote contemporaneous times and the time of Captain Kirk and Captain Picard, etc., because this was taking place before that. So they were doing various things to differentiate the crew of the NX-01 Enterprise in terms of their sort of cultural values and things from later, more familiar Star Trek crews.
And it was somehow closer to our times in some way, because it was midway. But yeah,
that was the idea anyway. And I think that sometimes there was some inconsistency or some maybe wrong turns taken when they were trying to figure out, okay, we don't want them to be as advanced as Captain Kirk and Spock, but we want them to be significantly more advanced than we are.
Yeah,
because the plot sort of requires that humanity has gone through World War III at this point, and now they're all at peace. So they did some cool stuff in terms of being racist against aliens. Not that that's cool. I'm not advocating for that. But that they did some storylines with flocks being attacked, after, the Xindi attacks, for example, like humans started not being cool with aliens, things like that. But in terms of the humor, there was a lot of stuff like this in Enterprise, these character beats that I think really relied on Captain Archer, and great guest stars like Clancy Brown he's fantastic. And I think you could have a similar scene here. And if you don't have the sort of, Trip Tucker saying, like, what are these little chunks? It works because Connor Trinneer is great. They're great actors. And I don't know. Again, it's debatable. I feel this is the kind of, it could have been a very hackneyed joke. I think you could argue it still is a hackneyed joke, but
it's a little broad, yeah.
But it comes across as, kind of fun. And part of the one of the best things there is right at the beginning of that clip where Clancy Brown is like, "Oh, you're going to love this."
Yeah.
I don't usually eat this one.
We can move on then to the next clip.
Tuvok.
Generator security. Get a team to the mess hall right away.
Stand back. He's been seized by the Pon Farr. A neurochemical imbalance is driving him to mate. We won't be able to reason with him.
Tuvok, I understand. You are a Vulcan man. You have just gone without for 7 years about. Paris, please find a way to load a hypospray. I will give you the sign. Just aim for his behind. Hormones are raging. Synapses blazing. It's all so very illogical.
So I just start cracking up in the middle because something about just listening to it and sort of imagining what's going on is kind of funny. But it's also just like the slow realization of sort of what's going on here, and they sort of introduce, because I don't really have much I have vague memories of that episode, and so like listening to it, it's kind of like things are being sort of revealed as it goes on, which is fun. It goes on for a little long, but maybe
I actually even cut that down because there's a whole chunk of the beginning where the doctor.
Yeah.
So just to let the audience know, to fill people in who don't know, this is from Tinker Tenor, Dr. Spy, from Voyager's 6th season. It's the 4th episode of the 6th season of Voyager.
I think it's Verdi.
Yeah, and the doctor is having a dream, effectively. He's dreaming that he's giving this performance to an adoring crew. Halfway through the performance, and I cut off the first part, but there's a whole minute of him just singing Verdi. So I eliminated that.
And that's tricky. That's the whole thing that Family Guy would do a lot, where they would have a fight scene or something, and instead of it being, 20, 30 seconds to give you the point, they purposely made it 5 to 8 minutes long, just so like it goes past and you're like, okay, this is going on for too long, and they're like, yeah, it's gonna go on like 3 times as long.
You just wait.
Yeah, and so that has its own sort of effect on making things become funny again.
And to clarify even more, the scene actually starts with the doctor recounting in prose the plot of the opera. So he's stating what the opera is about, and then he starts singing and sings the first stanza, basically, first a couple stanzas of the opera. And then what happens is Tuvok in the audience, and again, reminder, the doctor is dreaming at this point. Tuvok starts sobbing, crying, and then starts laughing, and everyone around Tuvok is getting freaked out because Tuvok's a Vulcan and he shouldn't be doing this. And that's when the doctor starts to do that improv, quote unquote improv, where he starts singing directions to people, and it's pretty clever. The whole episode it's listed as a classic Voyager episode for very good reason, because it's centers on the doctor. Robert Picard is a fantastic.
He's always good
actor
in every scene. Like I don't think there was ever a part where he delivered the line and I was just like,
he elevates any movie, any TV show. He's one of those actors that even if what he's in is shit, his parts are probably going to be good.
I will say that when we reviewed the one where he blink of an eye, that was Blink of an Eye.
Yeah.
And we had this discussion already. When he comes back, he's like, oh yeah, I was there for 3 years. I had a kid, blah, blah, blah. And it was all this ridiculous shit he'd done in 3 years. And now suddenly he's gone and it's all gone. And he doesn't seem to care.
But he's still awesome.
He's still cool. That's the thing, is like, it took me a minute to realize, like,
weird.
it wasn't until it was over there where I was like, wait a minute, that's some fucked up shit, because he's like so good.
Yeah, I agree. 100. Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, that's a very popular. A lot of you all wrote in and really liked Tinker Tenor, Dr. Spy. Some of you mentioned that scene in particular, but the episode in general is very funny, very interesting, and the doctor, when things centered on the doctor, because in that episode in Blink of an Eye, it didn't really center on the doctor. He was a component in that larger plot, but a lot of the doctor-centric ones are interesting. They're not all funny. There are some doctor-centric ones that are kind of sad or bittersweet, but Robert Picardo can pull those off as well. Alrighty. Now, this is the 4th clip. The 4th clip. Still under what most people thought were the best clips.
We got clips.
Yes.
Perhaps the professor could use your computer. Please.
Computer? Computer?
Oh, yeah. So, computer.
Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
Keyboard.
Yeah.
How quaint.
He's all typing all funny with his fingers.
Yeah. When he's doing this, his fingers are all super vertical.
Yeah, yeah. That's how I type. I learned it from him.
I like the computer sounds.
Transparent aluminum?
Totally.
That's the ticket, laddie.
He just introduces this amazing shit. And he's like, "That's the ticket, laddie."
I had no idea.
I so many times when I hear that's a famous clip that's from Star Trek 4, the Voyage Home, and it's where the crew of the Enterprise has been destroyed in the previous movie. They've commandeered a Klingon ship, and I mean, if for some reason someone out there listening is not aware, for various reasons that are explained and completely justifiable, Captain Kirk has to steal a bunch of whales from
1984?
1986, I think.
86.
Well, that's what they use to this day in the Enterprise, right? They use some kind of whale creatures. They're not really whale creatures, but some kind of water aliens to navigate.
They are some kind of alien.
Oh yeah, on the Enterprise D,
isolated.
they have the cetacean navigator section.
So
in
maybe
the technical manual.
Maybe that's a nod to.
Oh, I got that one on me. We can reference it later.
Oh, excellent!
After the podcast,
we can reference.
This is going to be a
alone.
short podcast tonight because we're gonna end early and pour over the Starfleet technical manual.
We're gonna reference it together.
And the best part is some people in the audience think I'm joking about that, but I'm not.
He's totally serious.
We're totally gonna do it. We're gonna pour some whiskeys or something.
The most serious part of the podcast.
Yeah, but so often when you hear that clip, you just hear the "hello computer." Hello, computer.
Right.
Hello, computer. That's the famous thing. Right. So they to finish my explanation,
you gotta wait for the transparent aluminum part.
Captain Kirk has to steal some whales. They have this Klingon ship, and so Scotty and McCoy have been tasked with acquiring some plexiglass to create tanks to hold the whales within the Klingon ship, right? And so in the process, Scotty basically figures out that they appear to go to some sort of chemical, like sort of plastic processing plant. They get a meeting with the manager somehow. I don't know.
Seemingly immediately.
Well, so when you watch the whole scene, the guy walks into the office he invites Scotty and McCoy in, and he's saying, Professor, you're clearly so smart about engineering and it's so great. And that's when they basically say, we'll give you this transparent aluminum thing, and if you give us some plexiglass, it's whatever. That's
a clear violation of the Prime Directive.
But I love when he says that's the ticket ladder.
Yeah, I know.
Because McCoy looks, when Scotty first makes this offer, McCoy looks at him like, "What the fuck is your problem, dude?" And he even specifically states, later, I don't have that in the clip, but he says, "What if this changes the future?" And Scotty's answer is like, "How do we know he's not the one who invented it?"
Right.
McCoy was like, "Oh, that's a good plan." I was like, "That doesn't work. You could do anything then, time traveling."
And then McCoy gives some pill to some lady that's on dialysis, and she's all cured, and everybody's flipping out at the hospital.
Yeah, and and when they're saving Chekhov, he's all like complaining about the medieval chemo and fundoscopic examinations, and then he
drilling holes in their head.
Yeah, and then he pushes them out, and all he does, he pulls out this weird gadget and he just puts it on the head, and it doesn't even. At least when they have what do they have?
Tricorder?
The medical tricorder.
Medical tricorder.
At least when they have those, you can think like, oh well, they know what they're doing. They have to program the shit right. This thing, he didn't have to program anything. He just
there were no buttons or anything.
And he just put it on their head. It's like, oh, you're fucking brilliant, McCoy. Complain about these guys.
You know what's fucked up though, Dan? The McCoy device is probably more accurate to what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah,
because the AI or whatever, you won't you would never want a doctor to actually do something.
Yeah,
to you.
It would send some like nanoparticles, or nanobots inside your bloodstream, and it'll come back.
Everything.
Yeah, and come back and tell you exactly what's wrong and fix it for you.
Yeah.
So, but McCoy was pretty, liberal with his distribution of future medical tech. But I guess who saw it? An elderly lady, and then some doctors off in the corner who will never get their hands on it again. So I guess Scotty kind of pushed the line.
Play fast and loose. It's just kind of funny, and it works for the story because there are a lot of comedic elements. And I picked this clip. Some people did mention this clip in particular, but a lot of people said Star Trek 4. So there were a number of clips we could have gone with the nuclear vessels.
It's got a lot of intentional humor for real.
Double dumbass on you.
Yeah. I mean, and that stuff is like, it's funny in a certain way. Are you from outer space?
I'm from Iowa.
It's like goofy.
But then there's some visual stuff like when that punk rocker's all playing that music and Spock gives him a Vulcan death grip. Vulcan neck pinch, not death grip. Yeah. They wouldn't do that.
Or just the visual humor of it's a fish out of water story, right? And those are hard to pull off. And Star Trek has done many fish out of water stories. Sometimes they do well, sometimes they don't do as well. I think Star Trek 4 is, by and large, really well done. If you nitpick this, if the laws of physics or whatever, maybe not. But as a story, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, time traveling. We talked about going around the Earth in a certain way to make yourself time travel. On a tangent, what do they call those episodes where there's two people stuck in some kind of like machine and they don't have any food or water, and the machine eventually they're gonna like die, and then they get rescued right the second before they die. I guess bottle, because they don't really have like one basic set.
Yeah, bottle episodes. I mean, it might be a subset of bottle episodes, because bottle episodes are sort of the ones like the ship in a bottle, where you don't need to build any new sets. It might go all over. For example, the Enterprise. You might see engineering and stuff, but you're conspicuously noticing not only that, but there's not a lot of space battles or anything either. It's really, sitting there, we're trapped in this room. Disaster is a good example of that, because they sort of stick to the existing sets, but they do a lot with it, which is cool. I mean, it's not like that's a great episode. Yeah.
I was thinking in particular, what made me think about it was with, I guess, Trip Tucker and freaking Reed, Malcolm Reed. I think it was Tucker.
Trip Tucker the Third.
I think it was Tucker.
Charles Trip Tucker.
I think it was Tucker and Reed were like stuck in some kind of space pod.
Shuttle pod 1. That's episode is called Shuttle Pod 1.
And they were getting all cold and shit. But I mean, I'd seen stuff like that before, but that's the first one that popped in mind. Interestingly enough, I hadn't really made the direct connection until I thought about it, was the episode Desert Crossing. That's kind of sort of, the end of it is kind of follows that, because they're trying to go somewhere. But they still don't have any supplies and all that shit, and they get rescued at the very last second.
It's just
not quite the same.
That has more geography, basically.
Yeah,
that's the only real difference. It's still a survival tale,
right? And the other one is the other kind, I guess, is kind of like starts at the beginning of the episode, and it's the slow realization over time that you're dying.
And that goes back to TOS with the Galileo 7 episode. Where there's a shuttle pod basically that's trapped on the surface, and a lot of it happens on the shuttle pod. So something Star Trek goes back to quite a bit. All right, so the next and the last one that we have in our grouping of best as far as the listeners were concerned, is this.
Are you crying because you can't contain it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see any tribbles around here.
And you won't find a trouble on this entire ship.
Bones! How did you do that?
Well, I cannot take credit for another man's work. Scotty did it.
Scotty! Where are the tribbles?
Oh, Captain, it was really Mr. Spock's recommendation.
Of course. Spock.
Based on computer analysis, of course. Taking into account the possibilities of...
Gentlemen, I don't want to interrupt this Mutual Admiration Society, but I'd like to know where the tribbles are.
Tell him, Spock. Well, it was Mr. Scott who performed the actual engineering.
Mr. Scott. Where are the tribbles?
I used the transporter, Captain.
You used the transporter?
Aye.
Well, where did you transport them?
It's got all brassy on you.
Yeah.
Scott, you didn't transport them into space, did you?
Captain Kirk, that'd be inhuman.
Well, where are they?
I gave them a very good home, sir.
Where?
I gave them to the Klingons, sir.
Gave them to the Klingons?
Aye, sir. Before they went into warp, I transported the whole kit and caboodle into the air engine room, where there'll be no tribble at all.
at all.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. Especially that music.
Yeah.
The goofy music.
It's so goofy.
And there, so okay, that's from the Trouble with Tribbles.
They remind me of the Piece of the Action had some cool like goofy music in it as well.
TOS had great goofy music.
Well,
They had great fight music.
They're going to
too.
want a piece of our action.
Yeah. So, by the way, Piece of the Action came up. That was a
that's
highly
funny.
often suggested one. So we could have had clips
Wasn't
from
it
there.
in like both categories for people?
I don't know. I think mostly positive.
Maybe it was-
There might have
yeah.
been one or two people who didn't think, but I think most people who mentioned Piece of Action thought it was good. And one person in particular noted that when they filmed a piece of the action, they actually brought in a sitcom director.
That was interesting.
Because they knew that they weren't always getting the comedy stuff correct. TOS did a pretty good job, but not always 100%. So apparently for that one, they brought in a director who was known for sitcom comedy, situational comedies. And I think to good effect. But in this case, this was The Trouble with Tribbles. Classic episode from the second season, I believe is the 15th episode. And this is Kirk and Spock. This is everybody. Uhura is there. They're all happy to have gotten rid of these tribbles. And Kirk in particular, because for a variety of reasons, he was particularly frustrated with the tribbles. And it's got camaraderie. It's got them all laughing at Scotty's brilliant joke saying where there'll be no tribble at all, which I've heard this 1,000 times, and that always sends me over the edge comedically, because it's already funny, everything's already humorous, and it's been built up well, and then he just tosses in that subtle little where there'll be no tribble at all, and it's just brilliant.
Yeah, they were talking about I guess like that'd be inhuman to send him off into space, but they sent him to a bunch of Klingons, so there's not really much good going to happen there either. So I don't really.
Yeah, I mean, replace tribble with, I don't know, dogs or rats or something. I mean, some other nuisance. I guess rat would be a good analogy. It's
bunch of snakes.
Yeah, yeah. Just beam a bunch of snakes over there.
Yeah, how come there aren't more beaming? Like practical jokes they play on each other.
I know.
Oh, I bet there are. We'll see those,
I hope we see those.
In the next, whatever the next Star Trek, and maybe in the Section 31 episode, it'll be largely about time travel and beaming-based practical jokes.
Beaming snakes at people.
What was it in Breaking Bad that one character had like his idea of Star Trek fan fiction? It was an episode, I think, where Spock was getting into an eating competition with McCoy or Scotty or something, and Spock kept winning because he had like the transporter in his stomach, and they were just transporting the food into space or something.
That's good.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I was.
Well, it's like we've asked before. Why can't you transport your poops out? Maybe that's why they don't have bathrooms. We don't really see toilets. I think it's rare that we see.
Nobody ever has to go on the show.
If you had to transport your poop, would you rather it be in your stomach so it just falls out before anything happens, or would you rather have it be like right at your anus so you get the whole process of feeling
Is it anus or rectum? We've tried to look this up before.
Well, maybe like a little patch around your anus.
I guess the anus is the anus, and the rectum is the rest of it.
Your anus or your rectum.
Yeah. Uranus, Uranus, and
That's a good question. So we encourage the listeners to write in and let us know.
They might have an idea
what your preference would be.
It's essentially the question.
Lower bowel, upper bowel.
The question is basically: would you want to not ever have to poop, or would you want the feeling of pooping, but everywhere, whenever you wanted to?
Pooping everywhere.
Yeah,
you want to poop everywhere.
Well, I mean,
but
anywhere, anytime.
You get the feeling, but you don't actually do it because it transports away. So you can have that feeling anywhere without the mess.
Exactly. And that's kind of analogous to doing it in the ocean for the first time.
Yeah.
Like peeing. I don't think I've ever pooped in the ocean. But
can you clean clothes by beaming? Right, presumably beaming is enough. Like, so the reason I thought of it is because
a weird question.
No, wait, okay. Let me backtrack.
It's an interesting question.
So what made me think of this is you're describing having your feces, your fecal matter beamed out of your body before it leaves your body, and there are a few different places that could happen and would have different sort of physiological
Transporter
effects.
room 3.
But what if you want that feeling of actually pooping, and you can just poop your pants, but then you can just beam all traces of the fecal matter.
Oh, so you want to
away.
like actually poop all over your pants and have it clean the poop out of your pants? You're taking it a step further than what I was saying.
I am posing a somewhat crude hypothesis. None of these things are in my personal bag of
That is a third option I hadn't thought of. It's like if you really want to feel like you got a squishy poopy pants, like you could do that. Mine was to stop it before it got
or
there,
if you just wanted to feel alive while pooping.
Yeah.
Because the act of pooping can be centering.
Well, that's what I was saying around the anus, because you would have the act of pooping. But it would
beaming out as you're pooping it out, it would sort of, okay, I got you. All right.
So,
But that's a fair compromise. I think that's a creative and ingenious compromise. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, no problem. You'd have to be pretty twisted to want to poop your pants and sit in poopy pants.
Because I thought you were going to be talking about pooping like before you poop, it just beams away the poop.
Well, that was
before it leaves your
body. That was my whole option A or B. Would you rather have it inside you or at your anus? Because it's basically the question of do you want to never feel like do you want to never poop? Never have to poop, never ever feel the urge to poop, or do you want to poop and get that feeling, but have it zapped away, which is why it would be
an age-old question.
And then you can,
we won't be able to get the answer to that.
You can poop on somebody and then have that all beamed away.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't want to be the recipient on that, though. I'm not.
Yeah, but you could do it to somebody else.
Some people are into that.
Yeah, I don't want to
each their.
It doesn't
own.
matter who you do it to. You could do it to somebody else.
I don't want to seem like
get beamed away.
We are open-minded,
phobic about it.
We are open-minded. All right, so now let's move along into the
move along home.
I like that episode. Worst attempts at humor in Star Trek, and again, this is from responses from the listenership, and so we collated ones that sort of got a lot of listeners agreeing with them. So here's number 1.
Captain Picard ordered me to escort you to sickbay, Lieutenant.
Did he say when?
I'm sure he meant now. So, you should get into uniform.
But I got out of my uniform for you, Data. Do you know how old I was when I was abandoned?
Chronological age?
This is where it gets weird.
No. I'm afraid I am not familiar with...
5. 5 years old. But I survived. I learned how to stay alive. How to avoid the rape gangs.
Jesus.
I was 15 before I escaped.
I am sorry. I did not know.
And what I want now is gentleness. And joy.
From a robot.
And love. From you, Data. You are fully functional, aren't you?
Of course, but...
How fully?
In every way, of course. I am programmed in multiple techniques. A broad variety of pleasuring.
Oh, you jewel. That's exactly what I hoped.
Star Trek music.
Yes.
Goofy music.
That's old school. So at first I thought you said this was the number 1 best funniest scene, and then I remember where we were past that one.
Yeah, we are past that. This is one of the ones that a lot of people thought was the worst scene. Now some people liked it, but
I think it's kind of funny.
But the majority of people thought this was not so funny.
Yeah, they really decided, like the showrunners or whoever, like really decided to break the ice early on with this show.
Well,
with Naked Now, which is the episode 3, but the first was a 2-parter. So they really right off the bat was like, okay, you're gonna walk up to that person, you're gonna call him a piece of shit, you guys are getting a fist fight, you're gonna make up, and now you'll be friends forever because you know each other's limits. Like that's kind of like where they were going with this. So that I think this is part of a greater whole, which is that episode.
Well, there's another aspect too, which is the Naked Now is effectively a light rewrite of a TOS episode named The Naked Time. And it's a similar plot. I mean, it's different, but it's the similar concept. And TNG did this a couple times early on where they recycled stories from TOS. And I'm not clear if it was just, they needed a script or they wanted to tie it in, because remember, The Next Generation was the first the first series after TOS, other than the animated series and some of the movies.
I can see them not really knowing if they wanted to, stray too far into their own thing, or if they just kind of felt like before, like a reboot or whatever.
Exactly. Are they differentiating or not?
Homage.
And at the time, obviously, they didn't know this when they were filming this third episode, but TNG was very poorly received initially by a lot of people. Yeah. They said it was not Star Trek. It was not their captain. Why is their captain
Where have we heard that before?
French? Yeah, exactly. So past is prologue, as they say, which is the name of an episode.
Wow.
Deep Space Nine. But
that's really the inner light right there.
Well disguised. Well disguised as naturalistic conversation. But anyway, so the Naked Now, I mean, it's funny, as in, I think most of us remember the fully functional bit. It's like, where she says, "Are you fully functional?" He says, "Yes, in every way."
I mean, that's one of the first questions you got to have.
Oh, you jewel.
Yeah, you jewel.
But when you watch the full scene, it is somewhat more disturbing because the bulk of the scene is, firstly, Tasha Yar acting completely out of character. So she's essentially intoxicated. And then she's talking about escaping rape gangs.
Being captured when she was 5.
Yeah.
It's like, that's...
So they're trying to get a lot of that's exposition right there.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to get you character, like this person comes from a really tricky and difficult and dramatic background, and it's 1987, so we're not gonna pussyfoot around the corner. We're just gonna straight up say like I evaded the rape gangs.
She's got baggage, man.
Yeah, well, so they were trying to set up this character quick. The part of the problem though is they're trying to set up this character while she's intoxicated and not acting like she's supposed to normally act.
Yeah.
So that's a little weird. And then of course it is weird that Commander Data does in fact have sex with an intoxicated colleague of his.
Wasn't he kind of intoxicated too, like in a weird way? I thought there was something about him where he was acting strangely as well.
Well, it was hard to tell because I didn't watch the whole episode.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
It's been super long.
And the because Data is played very differently early on by Brent Spiner. He has a lot more sort of a Pinocchio sort of vibe to him, more excitability, things like that.
Yeah, like when he's introduced and when Riker sees him in the holodeck, he's all, off in the corner whistling, being kind of sprightly and jumping about.
Wrong song.
So, yeah, I was just wondering if Data was kind of intoxicated as well, but either way.
I can't remember.
Yeah, but
regardless, it is there's an awkwardness. I understand why people put this on there, and especially when you're a young person, particularly a young boy, and watching this, you miss out. You completely don't pay attention to some of the shady stuff. Like I said, a non-intoxicated person, in theory, or at least a robot, an android, having intercourse with a clearly intoxicated, something is wrong with Tasha Yar, and he's still, has this very intimate experience with her. So looking back, it's one of those, it's slightly problematic. And I don't know if you can blame it on the times or not, because I don't know. It seems like that might have been
maybe you can blame it on the rain.
You could. That is not an episode of Star Trek, though.
I think that song's from after that episode.
Oh, is it from after that episode?
A little bit.
Yeah, now we're all
thinking like an early 90s.
Blame it on the rain.
Well, I mean, speaking of which, did you hear that the crew of the Enterprise is getting married?
No, I did not hear that.
Yeah, they have engaged the Borg.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, this falls under that category of the first joke you told. Where it has what could be described as a punchline, but that might not qualify.
It's technically a
if you were filling out a government form and one of those lines said "enter punchline here" and then had a blank line, and you put that punchline in, I think it'd be one of those things where they would call you up to clarify.
I was, I think it was bad. And the reason I took it was because I was quickly looking for something that had anything to do with romance, and I had all of about 3 seconds to do so, and I found that, and I hadn't even read the punchline at that point. So I was discovering that one as you were, and I was disappointed with that one. That wasn't mighty funny.
I mean, that's what we're all doing in life, is we're moving through life, discovering each other, discovering the world, discovering our own futures.
Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah. And speaking of romance, The next worst clip.
Wait, but before we move on, there was a scene too in there I remember where Picard and Crusher
in the naked time, naked now
in the no clothes time. That's
the naked now.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, Picard. There's always been sort of a thing with Picard and Crusher, not overtly romantic, but
Crusher hitting on Picard scene in there was another frequently requested from the listeners.
So first of all, I was wondering, so Picard and Crusher, they have a special friendship, but and they both sort of recognize
they're officers with benefits.
They both recognize that they're not going to do anything romantic, even though they think both. It's implied that they both think something could maybe happen, but they're not going to go that way because they're friends or whatever. Now, that probably has absolutely nothing to do with this episode because there was the romantic moment between her and Crusher and Picard in Naked Now. I'm guessing that relationship just sort of started on its own because there didn't seem to be really any repercussions of any, because it wasn't a serial show. So
I think part of a cool thing about Naked Now is that, and this is tricky because, you could argue a few different ways on this, but one thing that's cool is that they are future professionals, and so when it all gets sorted out, there's no real embarrassment about any of this because they're all like, what are you going to do? Alien presence and whatnot. But you could also argue that is disturbing to be, in an environment where everyone just kind of laughs these things off. So I don't know. I don't know which side I fall on.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and right, just wondering why they decided Picard and Crusher were going to have this sort of long-standing thing.
I don't know if this is true or not, but I've long heard rumors that early on, possibly from the inception, that there was going to be this whole subplot that one reason why Picard was somewhat uncomfortable with Wesley was that Picard had, in fact, had an affair with Beverly Crusher while she was married, and furthermore, that there may have even been a potential subplot where Wesley was actually Picard's child.
No!
Well, I thought that was sort of understood.
Well, that's the thing is it could be total bullshit. I
never thought of Wesley as being Picard's son.
It's
really?
people. There you go. See,
am I like the only person? Am I?
No, I didn't think that, but then I read it and then I thought it.
Whoa.
Yeah. Reading is fundamental.
I always thought that there was definitely some sort of maybe so kind of thing going on there. Yeah.
As the series progressed,
with the romantic relationship, I can see that with Picard and Crusher, but I never considered Wesley to be.
So as the series progressed,
you'd say that it's a reasonable.
It's sort of like because one thing leads to another.
Yeah, it's totally a reasonable. Now you say it seems reasonable.
I think there may have been initial plans to make it a little bit more pre-existing and complicated and more maybe soap opera-y, but what we ended up getting as the series progressed between Picard and Beverly was a more organic growth of their relationship, and you start getting more hints that Picard's reticence with Beverly was, among other things, the fact that he brought her dead husband's body home, and that he felt bad because he was very close with her dead husband and felt there's multiple layers of potential guilt for Picard where he's like, I probably ought not sleep with the wife of my dead friend and I believe first officer, et cetera, right? And he, like I said, he thought that the reason Crusher was dead was because of his own actions. Whether they were justified or not was irrelevant. It's that he ordered him basically to a situation where he ended up dying.
So in that scene, there was the romantic thing that was normal, but then there was a really bizarre kind of moment where Picard made a Beavis laugh. He went like, I thought I had to keep rewinding it because I thought the audio was out of sync or something. I couldn't, because you couldn't really see his lips moving.
Patrick Stewart was out of sync.
Just his throat. It was coming out of his throat when I don't know.
Well,
really
there was one other.
Am I right? Am I right?
Yes.
I didn't make that up or see some kind of weird.
Maybe it was the first instance of his French accent, which we'll be getting to in a bit. But his French accent. Hello, I'm Jean-Luc Picard. Hello, stereotypical. But another thing that happened in The Naked Now. Oh, so, okay, by the way, The Naked Now, with everything that people sent in, The Naked Now could have basically been all 5 of the worst clips. I picked the Data having sex with Yar one because I think it's sort of the most interesting in a lot of ways. But another one that people brought up, in addition to the Beverly Crusher hitting on people thing, was the whole subplot of Wesley Crusher takes over engineering. And he's acting, like everyone else, he's acting all sort of drunk. And he has some line in there where he's like, so you're saying it's like I'm drunk. I forget exactly what he says, but something, something very Wesley Crusher-y. And I was never I'm not a hater of Wesley Crusher. I think I was more aggravated by him when I was a child watching the show. But as I grew older, I appreciated the character more, except in this particular episode. It's obnoxious and it's not even the character. It's what happens to the character in this episode is just a little bit bizarre, and some of the acting is a little bit weird among everybody, not just Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton. Sorry, that's hack, but it's like Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton.
Will Wheaton.
So you mean I'm drunk? I feel strange, but also good.
That's right. Yeah. So you mean I'm drunk?
I feel strange, but also good. It's like get drunk,
which is horrifying because I don't know what I thought when I was a child and saw this. I could see Wesley Crusher saying that and being like, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
How old is he supposed to be?
Whenever I saw people drunk on
15 or
whenever
16.
I saw people drunk on TV, it always looked so cool.
Yeah, it's like super cool, man.
It's like super cool.
It's cool in real life too.
All right, so
super cool.
Moving on to the next worst clip.
The next worst.
You look nice.
Nice. That's all.
Very nice.
You may look like a female, but you have to do something about that voice.
I'm trying. I'm trying.
Well, try harder.
And stop looking down.
I need to see what I look like. Someone get me a mirror.
You see, brother, you look lovely.
Oh!
There go his hormones.
You mean her hormones?
Take it away! Take it away! I'm sorry. I just feel so different.
Would you stop staring at your chest?
I'm not staring at my chest. I'm staring at my hips.
So that is from Profit and Lace.
It's a bit problematic, isn't it?
Along with The Naked Now, probably the most comments we got were saying Profit and Lace was the worst.
Yeah, there was somebody who took exception.
Those
to that.
women just get worked up over nothing, huh?
It is a problematic episode, and it's unfortunate because Deep Space Nine is really such a fantastic series. They have very few clunkers, and even what some people would normally consider clunkers are sort of only clunkers in relation to other Deep Space Nine episodes. They're actually pretty okay.
This one's even got like the Grand Nagus, but it's still like...
This one has this weird problem where on the one hand, it's doing that classic, Mrs. Doubtfire style, all those, Shakespeare, basically the whole mistaken identity situation. And this, Quark, just to clarify, Quark has to dress up. Well, not just dress up. Quark has to get sexual reassignment surgery, which Bashir agrees to, presumably, in order to trick another Ferengi into believing that female Ferengis can have good business sense. Right?
It's the only way to do it.
And there's this relates to a larger plot that's we don't need to get into, but Deep Space Nine fans will be familiar with in terms of the sort of a female liberation in the Ferengi alliance. And this episode thinks it's a pro-feminist, like that's what it thinks it is. It thinks it's telling a story about being like helping
it's like
women.
Pro-feminist for the 90s. So.
But yeah, the whole thing is difficult to watch and awkward. And even some of the parts that are funny, you just end up feeling bad for thinking they're funny, even though they're well delivered or whatever. Right. It's Some Like It Hot, except in like you said, in the 1990s. I mean, it just kind of doesn't work. Some of the lines are straight out of Some Like It Hot.
Yeah, I guess the whole it's it's supposed to be progressive in the sense that it's saying like, yeah, women can do this too, but it's kind of the man who has to do it for them in order to like make it happen. So it's still the man's in kind of like in control.
And one of the messages,
and the thing is people can say, "Oh, well, that's just Ferengi culture or whatever." But it's like, no, that's
looking at his.
This is a human TV show.
Yeah, it's a human TV show. It's saying it's putting across. It's not saying nothing, you know.
And it's not like it's 100% offensive. There is it's just poorly executed. But there's a message in there where Quark learns what it's like to be a woman who is treated poorly, sexualized. I have another clip, maybe we'll play if we have time, where a man tries to rape Quark. And so then by the end of the episode, Quark, who had been sexually harassing one of his employees at the beginning of the episode, at the end of the episode, he apologizes and says he now understands what it's like because he was almost raped by a guy. That's now he's going to treat his employees better. So I know they're trying to show some growth there. It is weird and awkward.
Yeah.
The next clip coming up is our old friend.
Sir. Ah, Mr. Vulcan. Come in, please. I can hardly see you.
I'm not laughing at this, I'm laughing at Dan's face.
wanna
He looks so
thank you
angry.
Oh, wait, I remember
hospitality.
that. Yeah.
I must admit, I haven't had access to a food replicator before.
Right.
I'd never have guessed.
And to immerse myself in water. Oh, do you know what joy this is? No one around here wastes water in this manner. Good sand scrub. That's the best that we can hope for.
Sand scrub.
I'm pleased you're enjoying yourself, but we're in orbit of the 5th planet. We need your assistance.
Oh, could you hand me the towel? If you will scan the large southern continent, you'll find a range of extinct volcanoes. Follow the foothills north until you discover a dry riverbed. You'll find an encampment there.
Do you believe our people might be at this location?
It's not impossible. Maybe. Perhaps not. But we'll find them. We'll need several containers of water to bring for barter.
Don't trust this guy.
Do these replicators make clothing as well?
This guy's probably like a war criminal in hiding.
Will it make me a uniform like yours?
No, it most certainly will not.
You know, I once knew a Vulcan who grew up in London.
Oh no.
Yeah. He had a Spockney accent.
Okay, that's a good one.
Right on.
I'll take that. Chase them up the old apples and pears, or whatever the Vulcan equivalent of that would be. Okay, so that clip was of our old friend Neelix from Caretaker.
Neelix is nobody's friend.
The pilot episode, the second half of the pilot episode of Star Trek Voyager. And, all right, well, I'm going to lay it right out there. I'm not a fan of Neelix. I'm a fan of Ethan Phillips, the actor.
Oh, yeah.
I am not a fan of the character of Neelix, and I think the character of Neelix, rightly or wrongly, fairly or unfairly, impacted my overall enjoyment of Voyager when it was airing. I know I'm not alone.
Nope.
I also know plenty of people think Neelix is awesome, and echoing Dan's comments at the beginning of the podcast today, no worries, that's awesome. We're not going to be enemies because you like Neelix. I mean, it might be 1 point against you.
But there's a lot of points.
He's a good actor.
It's a big point. Yeah, exactly. It's a big scale.
Neelix, in the pilot, he sort of introduces himself as he's kind of an asshole, just because
in this clip he's scheming against them. He's lying to Mr. Vulcan.
He's constantly scheming, and like from the very offset, he wanted to leave them all to die, and like that was after they saved him. If I remember we did an episode about this, but it's like he got rescued, and then when they needed his help, he was like, "Oh no, let's jet," and then I think it was Kess who convinced him to do it.
Yeah,
that's right. They went down to save Kess. That's what he did.
He manipulated them into saving Kess by claiming
he manipulated them.
Get back Kim and B'Elanna.
Right, so it was
Kim
even worse because he manipulated them to help Kess, and then he wouldn't. Yeah,
and the what's not always examined or interrogated with that is Neelix wants to save Kess. when they find him, he says whatever he needs to say to have them help him save Kes. It is basically a coincidence that Kes is also where Harry Kim and B'Elanna Torres are. So it ends up working out for the Voyager in the sense that they help out Kes through Neelix's manipulations, but are also now in a better position they can actually help Harry and B'Elanna.
Yeah.
They get closer to being able to help them. But when
he still wanted to jet, and Kes had to convince him.
Exactly. And if you tease that apart, I mean, Kes could have been on a completely different planet.
Yeah, right.
Or on a different part of the planet.
Right.
In some way that wouldn't help them, and then he would have simply left. Even if,
Yeah, so he's kind of an asshole, but that's not, I guess that's... You can have unlikable characters that are still good characters, that you still overall are like...
I think he's aggravated.
That's still a valuable character. And so, like, is Neelix a valuable character? I don't know.
I don't know. The thing is with Neelix is, I think it's 100% fair to say that throughout Voyager, there are moments and even episodes with Neelix that are good. And there's good stories, and he does interesting stuff. He's not a character that's completely boring or devoid of any sort of interest. But he's an aggravating character, just from my perspective. And I agree with you, Dan. I think it can be done in a way that works. I tend to lean more on the side that it, more often than not, doesn't work with Neelix. And some of the stuff was just in the setup was weird. He was set up as a scoundrel.
No, I don't think I never really said that Neelix works. That's not what I was saying.
No, you were saying that it's conceivable that you could have a character like that would work.
Well, it was more like just because a character is unlikable doesn't mean they're a bad character. And in fact, that makes the show better when you have sort of likable and unlikable characters. It's like good to have that. So if they're unlikable, that's not enough, I feel, to make it a negative, sort of give you this... I think of it like what I was saying. I try to think of it more in terms of, do I feel like it's a valuable character, or aggravating is kind of like, it might be better if that just. If you feel like you would rather watch this story without that character, then like.
And a lot of people would make the same argument for, say, Wesley Crusher, for example, and I don't feel that as strongly against Wesley Crusher.
I don't either, and I'm wondering if it's an age thing because like I grew up more with it, or I don't know why that is, but also. Yeah, because both, Will Wheaton and Neelix actor, whatever, he was in Better Call Saul.
Yes, he played a judge in Better Call Saul.
Benson.
He was in Benson?
Yeah, he was in Benson.
And he's in that new show like Avenue
Ethan Phillips.
5.
Ethan Phillips.
That's what it's called. Avenue
Ethan
5.
Phillips is a great actor.
Right, yeah, exactly. So he's really good. But yeah, I remember, I think I was reading Reddit or something, and someone's comment was that they thought that he got better when Kes left the show. Mm-hmm. And so maybe it was just like less pandering towards this, like him being around this Kes character all the time. But
he's an older guy and she was 5, 2, 3, I know that's the alien race.
She dies underage.
I think they figured out the Kes character was problematic from a variety of things, and then of course they brought in 7 of 9, and there was some improvement.
It was a weird choice to make because Neelix is this kind of like old looking. The way the alien looks, he looks like sort of a caricature of an old person.
It's an
or
idea that I think you get,
and then she's like 2 years old.
But you can get when it's part of the founding myth of a show. It's in the pilot. I think you can sometimes trap yourself if the concept isn't great. And I'm sure we could probably think of some examples across a lot of the Star Trek shows. The Neelix and Kes one sort of stands out, I think. Okay, so the next one on the worst list. This is number 4 on the worst list.
Jake, I don't know what you're thinking, but I'm sure I'm not going to like it.
Don't you see? The Vedic was bidding on that lot because there was an old Bajoran Mandala in there. He must have been working for the Kai. When they lost, the Kai must have gotten angry. And we all know how dangerous she is when she's angry.
What are you saying? That in order to get the Mandala, she kidnapped Geiger?
It all makes sense now.
Jake, I'm really starting to worry about you.
Come on.
Where are we going?
Let me introduce you to a new human expression. We're going to beard the lion in its den.
Lions, Geigers, bears.
Oh my.
Yeah, so
What the fuck was that?
they just really went for that all the way. And
They were
like,
too cute by half, right?
huh?
They were too cute by half. I'm using a saying that I'm more familiar with than the saying to what was it to beard
To
the lion?
beard
in
the lion.
So okay, I've never heard that.
Too cute for half? What was it you said? Too cute to
Okay, no, that's a saying. That's an aphorism.
Too cute by half.
She was too cute by half.
Too clever by this refers to a sly person who is half smart.
Well, it probably is normally too clever by half.
That
and then I've modified it.
You know, it's the funny thing is that made me seem like I was too cute by half because I was like, what?
You're definitely too cute, dude.
It's true. He's adorable.
Way
But
too.
to beard the lion is to confront a danger, take a risk. As in, I went straight to my boss, bearding the lion. Although
I'm just not familiar with that phrase.
it's a Bible story about like the shepherd David, who I'm reading directly off Google, who pursued a lion that had stolen a lamb, caught it by its beard, and killed it.
Oh, the Bible.
So that's
Beard the
bearding
lion.
it? I would have thinking bearding would have been like you shaved the lion's beard while he was sleeping or something. Like, I don't know. Why is catching something by a beard bearding it? You're catching it. You're not
The lion
bearding
doesn't
it.
have no beard. It's got whiskers.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a mane,
And a
I
mane,
guess.
yeah.
Goats have beards.
Don't they kind of have a little thing at the front that they
No, you're thinking of unicorns.
No.
Yeah.
A narwhal?
Unicorn myth comes from they originally are goats.
Yeah.
So goats can have a genetic disorder where their horns grow together and they appear to be a single spiral horn. So if you look at the oldest unicorn lore, it is a spiral horned goat, which was considered an omen, and has the little billy goat thing. Over time, it evolved into a horse, but it retained the spiralness of the horns
And some kind
and the
some
goat
kind of chin music.
and the chin goat, because
Some
horses
sweet
don't have
chin
beards. Goats have beards. And that's the fact for the day.
Lions have mane.
Yeah.
Okay.
I laid down some awesome unicorn lore, and you're like, you lions have mane.
Tigers have stripes.
Otters like rocks.
They kind of got a muzzle. They got muzzle fluff. This is what lions have. They have muzzle fluff.
Yeah, the cats.
So
clearly, we agree that this is not a particularly funny scene because we're talking about some nonsense.
But bearding means if bearding would mean anything, it would mean to shave. Why would it just be called shaving?
Put the beard onto
but
something.
no, if you
put the beard onto
okay,
something.
beard but no, you can
like when you get the kids that stand on each other's shoulders with the trench coat, they put a beard on to get in the movies.
You're bearded. Yes, you are bearded.
To get into the rated R
you can
movies.
Beard something. But I'm also thinking like when the grapes are seeded, they've been seeded, which means they have no seeds. So that's kind of weird. They're de-seeded.
I don't think that means
That's like pitted.
Yeah,
pitted. Sorry,
pitted.
close.
Seeded.
I was close.
Yeah,
In
but
any-
same. Everything applies. Everything that you said before applies.
No, but to say pitted, it would be de-pitted instead of pitted. So that's why I was thinking bearded. He has to put on a beard.
Defenestrate.
Either way, if
Inflammable.
Whether it's to put, you're right. But whether it's to put the beard on or take the beard off, that's what a bearding would be to me. A bearding would not be to grab a beard. That's not in my mind.
And a further reminder that this is not a funny line from an otherwise I like
We're criticizing something unrelated.
The Bible is
Only
not a source of
related.
jokes.
So, and we've neglected to fill the audience in for those who are desperately trying to figure out. This is from the season 5, episode 24, episode of Deep Space Nine, in the cards. And I think
is this one where Nog disappears into? No, is this the one where Nog disappears into the holodeck, or is that a different one?
No. That's much later. In the cards is a really sweet episode.
Oh, that's when he loses his leg and it's really serious. This one's more lighthearted.
This is very lighthearted. You're talking about the Siege of AR 58855585888.
Yeah, something like that. So this is the one where the A plot is pretty lighthearted, but the B plot is serious, and so it's kind of the opposite of all.
No, actually, both of them are lighthearted, but because it's Deep Space Nine, one is lighthearted that thinks it's serious, and then the other one is thinks it's serious. Is serious, but thinks it's more lighthearted.
Wait a second.
All right, let me unpack this for you, bros. Right. So the premise of this episode is this is right before shit's about to go down on Deep Space Nine, where the Cardassians are going to come and kick their ass.
This is Kai Wynn in
Yes.
it, so it's serious.
No, but it is, but huge boatload of butts here.
Uh-oh.
This episode was meant to be a sort of a palate cleanser right before they go into the situation at the end of season 5 and the first part of season 6 where they lose the station. They have to evacuate the station because of the war. They lose a big battle, and there's all sorts of interesting stuff going on, and they don't get back to the station for a while. So they wanted to do something that was a little bit fun in the interim. And this is the episode they did. So all the prelude to war stuff is happening with Cisco and Dax, the senior staff. Kai Wynn is involved. The Vorta are there. So there's all sorts of stuff going on.
Vorta.
And what happens is there's an auction going on at Quark's, and there's an old box.
We're like, no Morta.
There's an old box that has a bunch of stuff in it, right? And so somebody's auctioning off this box, and the box has
what's in the box?
What's in the box? It has a variety of things in it, and one of those things is I think it's a Buck Bokai baseball card.
Buck Bokai.
And Jake decides that it's going to be his mission to acquire this baseball card to give to his father because he knows his father is stressed out because of all the war stuff, right? So Jake enlists Nog, guilting him basically because of Captain Sisko helped Nog get into Starfleet Academy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So Jake and Nog basically team up to acquire this baseball card, and it becomes a comical sort of series of vignettes where they're doing all these different things to try to get this baseball card from this strange guy named Geiger, who comes up with a pod that will give you.
He's all germaphobe or something.
He's a germaphobe, and he's going to give. He has this idea how to gain immortality by entertaining your cells. So you go into this pod, and it's supposed to like entertain your cells. So it's funny. There's a lot.
My cells just being like. Yay!
There is a lot of funny stuff in this episode, and then it has this bizarre line. It's almost like they came up with this line first and wrote the whole episode around it, but the rest of the episode is better than this line about the lions, Geigers, and bears. It's ridiculous,
and they kind of linger on it a little too long. Now maybe they thought, well, we really got to go with this 100% in order to make this work, but I don't know, it didn't really work.
It was odd. It was an odd choice.
So that was the A plot, but the B plot was
that's the A plot. The B plot is actually quite funny because what happens is Wei Yun, is there with the Jem'Hadar. They're there to meet with Kai Wynn, which is fucking with, the Federation and all this other stuff. So there's all that political stuff going on. But what happens is Wei Yun and the Jem'Hadar are staying in quarters one floor above the Geiger guy who is making the pod to entertain cells. Now, they are listening in and using spy stuff because they keep hearing sounds from below them, and they become convinced that this Geiger guy, who is in fact just a crackpot lunatic, they think he's some sort of like Starfleet super spy.
Okay.
So there's this whole comical thing where the Wei Yun is dealing with this Geiger guy.
So I guess it's not that the B plot is serious. It's more like it's on a serious backdrop, which is the backdrop is Sisko's depression.
But essentially everything is comical, other than, Sisko is stressed out, but it's a nice episode, and it's a son wanting to do something nice for his father and then enlisting the help of basically everybody on the station, including some of the bad guys, end up, helping out. And so now let's go to the last of the worst clips.
Yeah.
Mr. Comic, I wish to know what is funny.
It's funny, I don't know. It's a matter of opinion, I guess. Tip O'Neill in a dress. Some people say words that end with a K are funny. Who knows who Tip O'Neill is? A briefcase that looks like a fish. Personally, I find that hysterical.
O'Neill. Accessing.
Tip O'Neill.
20th century male, politician, overweight, wearing female clothing, carrying a valise that looks like a fish. So, the juxtaposition of gender and an amphibian briefcase is funny.
Well, I think whatever makes you laugh is funny.
Laugh?
Nothing makes me laugh. I wish to learn.
Well, how much time do we have here?
Unlimited.
We're gonna need it. You, pal, are a tough room.
I'm Joe Piscopo.
Tough room.
You're gonna need eternity.
A colloquialism, meaning a severe, rigid, close-minded audience. I understand. I will attempt to be an easy room. Show me what is funny.
All right, you're on. Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis. Ooh, you short for a moment, if I could just say, Mr. Robot, would you like to come up?
I am an android.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Mr. Android, here, Keith, put him in your mouth. Come up, Mr. Where did he go? Where did Mr. Robot, Mr. Robot? Here, try, if you would. We go. You do, ha. No, you're so high.
That is considered to be funny?
Actually, it brought the house down at T-Neck.
It must be like weird being Joe Piscopo and doing his shtick like on an episode of Star Trek.
Yeah.
How do you perform in an environment? I mean, he's a professional, of course, but even so, it seems a little bit
it had to be weird,
out of place. I can see joking as Data being an android, not getting it and stuff. That goes with the show, but like just doing some Jerry Lewis bits on Star Trek
nowadays,
TNG.
Most people aren't going to get any of those jokes anyway.
Yeah, they won't know what Tip O'Neill is. They won't know Jerry Lewis. And by the way, in about 20 years, they won't know what a fish is.
Oh shit!
Because there won't be any fish left.
Be jellyfish.
And
they're going to know about krill and jelly.
I don't know about you guys. I mean, we were all laughing at that. This one. Lots of people wrote in either this particular scene was they thought it was bad, or the entire episode, the outrageous Icona, which is the name of the episode. It's from season 1, I think. Oh no, season 2, episode 4. That's right. This is a second season, and I like this scene. The outrageous Icona as an episode is, it's a little problematic. There's some weird.
Well, the Data stuff is sort of better than the rest of it.
Exactly. The Data subplot.
Even though it's goofy, it's still,
It's goofy, and Brent Spiner makes it work, in my opinion. On the other hand, I completely understand why people would be aggravated by some of this.
Well, it's just completely silly. Like, it's just, it's one of those things where you take some kind of super 20th century thing and you put it in Star Trek, and that's the joke. Like,
yeah, I mean, was it ever really intended to be seriously funny? As in, we're performing a bit, and they're going to laugh at this bit. It's more you're laughing at the idea of the bit happening, and that's
exactly, yeah.
And that
it's a joke about comedy.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty good. I think that's I enjoy that scene just because it's the whole sort of approach, and of course it's with Data, who doesn't get how to tell a joke, It was
that's the episode with you're a droid and I'm annoyed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she goes,
and she's an actual comedian, so she gets the line.
She goes, look, it's just you and I here. We're talking. We're having an intimate conversation. Why? Because you're a droid and I'm annoyed. But why? Because that's what I am. Have I said something to offend you? No. Then are you annoyed? Blah blah blah. So yes, you told a joke. Yes, I'm not laughing. Yes, perhaps the joke was not funny. No, the joke was funny. It's you, Data. Well, sorry about that. So Guinan was calling Data out, being like, "No, this was a funny joke. You just didn't get it." But then later,
and Whoopi Goldberg does a great job in that scene, as she always does.
She knows what comedy is.
She's fantastic as Guinan.
Yeah, because then the next one, the roles reverse. Data's in the scene, all moving his arms around with the cigar, waving around. He's like, a guy walks into the doctor's office. The doctor tells him, "You need an operation." The guy says, "I want a second opinion." The doctor says, "Okay, you're ugly too." Ba boom boom. And then when he goes, "Was that funny?" and she goes, "No." It's a great delivery on her part, and it's funny because this time it's not that she didn't get the joke, it's that he told it wrong. So both times, giving or receiving a joke, he's bad at it. But then he redeems himself because she goes, "You spoiled the joke. It could have been your timing." And then Data goes, "My timing is digital." And then Guinan laughs, of course, because that was actually funny. So, yeah, I mean, I think all those scenes sort of put together, just that little story that was told through those scenes, I thought was,
Brent Spiner is a comedic actor. I mean, I first saw him on Night Court, right? He played a recurring sort of a weird redneck character. I mean, sort of offensive in some ways, but he's very funny. He's still got it. I mean, we saw him in Picard. He's got very good timing. I saw him recently, rewatching Enterprise. He plays Eric Soong or whatever, one of the Soong ancestors. And there's a lot of serious stuff. He's very good at the drama, but he's quite good with the comedic timing. But this episode, it's beginning of season 2, and it's also we start seeing Data be more reserved after this, right? Up through now, and there's a little bit further into season 2, Data gets a little more goofy, but then he starts pulling back. I don't know if that was Spiner's decision or just the writing, and Data becomes more reserved, but he still is a great source of humor in other ways. Playing off that reservedness and that androidness.
Yeah, the characters tend to get more identity, or at least they sort of exaggerate their identity. It depends on, they go in different directions, they can do things, but either way, it becomes more sort of crystallized what they're going for with that character. I mean, even Spock in the first episode of Star Trek seemed like not outright emotional, but still like had moments of like, outbursts. What a Vulcan would be considered an outburst. And, right. And, the only time Data really became funny again after this was it was when he was specifically had an emotion chip or something like that. And actually, and more at the beginning too, it just reminded me, there was more at the beginning of him like sort of like Picard asking him for some information, and he starts giving the information, and then he starts giving too much information.
Right,
and
that's
Picard
usually the joke with Data. That's
and that was the joke with Spock as well.
Yeah.
Right, it's like, okay, I get it, that's enough, And with Data, it was more exasperation they would have towards him. But I feel like, I could be wrong, but I feel like they started doing that less too as time went on. So.
And whether it's a characterization or you, of course, can argue Data's learning. I mean, he's growing as a person in that process.
That's true,
and starts to calm down a little bit in some ways. So why don't we move ahead to these were the more controversial ones. This is where we got comments from listeners, some saying these were their favorite funny moments and some saying they were their worst. So it should be interesting.
I can't see 2 meters in front of us. And anyway, we could both use a rest. So stop pacing and sit down. What is it?
Oh, I don't know. I sat on something. Oh.
Let me see.
Oh, get it out.
Well, keep still and let me see what I can do.
Get it out.
This is gonna hurt.
It already hurts. Just take it out.
If you say so.
No!
Ouch. Run this dermal regenerator over the wound.
This isn't funny.
It is from this angle.
Kira was looking at Gul Dukat's
what's
butt.
even funny here?
He's all pointing at her.
This doesn't work.
That's kind of funny, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Just the sound.
Yeah.
So that was Gul Dukat rubbing his butt with a toy with some sort of medical device, and Dan's wacky sounds. That was from a Deep Space Nine episode called Indiscretion, which was from season 4. I think it was the 5th episode. And basically what happens there is Dukat and Kira, two people who Kira really does not like Dukat, given that he sort of ruled over her planet and ran slave and effectively genocide camps for many years. So she's not a huge fan of him, but she's been ordered basically to join him, and they're looking for something. And they're in a cave, and Dukat sits on a spike, and it's funny. And so I don't know. I always thought this was charming. This is the type of humor Deep Space Nine got into a lot, was this more character-based humor. It's a little harder to appreciate this if you haven't been watching the story up to this point. But then, in typically Deep Space Nine fashion, in order to really understand the sort of the weight of this scene, is not only to understand the background of Dukat as a former oppressor of the Bajorans, including Kira, but also to understand this issue that Kira has in terms of she's laughing with this guy. She's getting too comfortable with him. And then that ends up causing sort of a crisis in her because she's having a moment of levity with essentially the equivalent of a Hitler or a Himmler from her culture's perspective. So even though it's funny, but it's also surrounded by a lot of pretty intense context.
I think, the idea of the scene is really good, and I think for the most part it is really executed well. I think someone said, and I kind of agree with this one aspect, but it doesn't ruin the scene for me. It's just one small part, is the laughter sounding a bit forced, and that's more of an execution issue, but like...
A little theatrical.
Yeah, and the thing is like, I couldn't do nearly that good. So what?
But you can criticize them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. I have that guilt, and I know
it's always kind of funny when people are just laughing, and it's like, well, are we just laughing because they're laughing, or is it something actually funny happening?
Right. That's part of the movie theater experience.
Because it's so weird to see
to
see actors laughing. It's like, well, they're acting laughing.
And also, there's different schools of acting too.
Yeah,
right. Deep Space Nine was known for having a lot of theater actors. I mean, from up and down the line, almost.
So I'm hesitant to say that it's bad. Done negatively because I don't know. I don't know how someone's going to force like heavy laughter for that long of a time without it sounding a little out of.
I think people could do it. I bet you Scott Bakula could do it.
Yeah.
For example, I think there are people who their style, their training is more naturalistic. On the other hand, the theatrical training provides the gravitas, and it depends on the story.
It's also weird to see Dukat and Kira laughing like that.
Exactly.
So that too.
And so there's this whole weird awkwardness going on, this discomfort in the audience while they're watching this that adds to it. And, honestly, I love Mark Alaimo as Dukat, but you could argue he's being a little bit scenery campy here. It works when he's the head of a powerful military force or getting up to some sort of evil schemes. I could see if somebody is thinking, you know what, maybe that doesn't work so well when he's got a spike up his butt.
You know what? I hate when people sniff on TV or movies because they don't do a normal it's always like
yeah.
It always sounds like they've got like just a nose full of boogers they haven't blown out in a week or something.
Do you think they added in the sniff?
They totally did.
They do like a Foley sniff.
They totally add in something because it's like
spent $100,000 searching out the perfect sniff.
It's like they some kind of like wind tunnel and they like open up a valve and they close the valve.
Like they'll have a scene where someone's sniffing a bunch of drugs or something, and all I can think is like, I mean, I imagine they wouldn't be able to get much of that drug onto their skin with all that nose full of booger already, So it just sounds so gross. That and when people like eat food from a fork and you can hear it clanking on their teeth. I think that's gross too. Okay.
All right, so here's the next clip from the collection of ones where some people thought they were great, some people thought they were terrible.
Terrible. That's terrible.
It's the worst.
It's terrible.
This one sounds terrible.
I think I know what she's doing. You have to fight to get her back, Captain.
Open. It's not over between us, Luoxana. You're mine, and I will not let you go. I insist you return to my side immediately.
You mean you still care?
My love is a fever, longing still for that which longer nurseth the disease.
Tell me more.
In faith, I do not love thee with mine eyes, for they in thee 1,000 errors see, but 'tis my heart that loves what they despise, who, in despite of view, art pleased to dote. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Let me not.
You didn't tell me that you and Captain Picard were...
You said you didn't want to hear about my other romances.
I have a new love, Jean-Luc. And you can't keep killing all my lovers. Now that simply has to stop.
Killing?
Oh, he's insanely jealous.
Listen, Tog. I must possess Luoxana, and if that means destroying your ship in the process, so be it.
Captain, I had
no idea, Luoxan.
Don't let him threaten you. You can defeat him. The only way you'll ever get me back is over Togg's dead body.
That can be arranged.
Processing. Affirmative.
That was a meme scene right there where he's putting his hands out.
That's the meme
It's
scene.
like I forget what it is exactly, but it's like why the fuck would you bump something scene where he's putting his hands towards the camera.
It's also an example, one of, I would argue, many examples of Picard goofily pretending in order to accomplish an important mission, which we're going to actually see in this next clip.
Well, I thought that I think that's like I thought that's just a classic kind of Picard scene.
Yeah.
You know, so
again, this is for me. I totally understand both sides. Menage a Troi, again, one of the top comments, top number of comments were about Menage a Troi being terrible. But in this case, a huge number, almost the same, were saying no, Menage a Troi is great. So clearly controversial. I go back and forth. I think when I was younger,
that scene is good.
I didn't like this. I think when I saw Menage a Troi more recently, I found it was pretty entertaining. You know, it's early episode. It's not,
I'll give it a watch. See again.
It's a season 3, late season 3, right towards the end of season 3, where they've developed the characters, shaken out some of the kinks, and I get the whole thing with Luoxana. I fully understand it, but this episode, I don't know, worth a revisit. And there's at least scenes like this that I think are definitely quite entertaining. All right, now we'll move along with another Picard one.
Disgusting thing. Once they get the Borg inside them, there is no coming back, no matter what they think. Defiled is what you are. Damned, cursed.
Quite a prize. Rare to find one with so many implants still fully operational.
She is not one of the new ones. The Borg entered her. She was a jeune fille. You are going to have to dice her up to get it all out. A little squeamish, are we? I can take my trade elsewhere.
No, not squeamish. Not at all.
Your work is done.
Mind if I have another drink?
It's a free planet.
Let's see if there's a deal to be made.
Now that's the kind of talk that I like. But one last thing. I need proof that my bounty is alive. I need to see Maddox.
I thought those juxtaposed well because it's a one of the early examples of Picard having fun playing a character, and not even Patrick Stewart, Picard, and a more the most recent one from the season 1 episode 5 episode of Picard, Stardust City Rag. I think the main difference is in the Menage a Troi example, Picard is a little bit more reluctant and then sort of gets into it, whereas by Stardust City Rag, he's all about it.
He's jumping right in, like before they even get down to that planet. He's like, "What do you think about? Is this appropriate enough?"
Well, I mean, do you know what Picard's biggest pet peeve is, though, right?
Oh no.
He's not really French.
It's when the crew replaces his dilithium crystals with Folgers crystals.
Folgers crystals.
Yeah.
Oh.
Nobody's going to get that joke either.
Oh, that's right. It's so dated. These are all really bad. Like, not even like, oh, it's so bad, Dad.
It would make more sense for
bad
Kirk,
dad
too.
jokes.
Picard was never worrying about dilithium crystals because they had like, the dilithium crystal matrix that regenerated dilithium crystals.
Yeah, the jokes just don't make sense.
Anyway, people, I mean, the Picard stuff was really love or hate. I mean, that was, people said the French Picard.
People drew a line in the fucking sand.
Yes, it's intense. I mean, you get some intense comments there. Most people were playing pretty friendly regarding the other ones, but the Picard one, it was either this is great or this is terrible. It's the worst thing that ever fucking happened in my life.
Got their feelings early.
Man, I mean, and we talked about how, TNG, when it first came out, people, a lot of people didn't like it. For whatever reason, I was reminded right now of all things of this video game Fallout 4, which is made by the same company that made the later, the Skyrim.
Yeah, Bethesda, right?
Bethesda.
Is it named after Bethesda, Maryland?
It is. That's where they're located.
Bummer.
But But when Fallout 4 came out, everyone who loved Fallout 3 was just like, oh, you can't do these things anymore. And, and everyone was complaining. And well, the world's really good, but you can't do this and this. Focus on all the bad things. And of course, within a year or two, people talk about what a great game it was. And there's still people who are complaining, but it's the dialogue, the conversation on the internet was much different. Because it just sort of come out. And actually, a lot of people who like Fallout 1 and 2 thought Fallout 3 was a travesty. So, I don't know. The Picard thing, I'm interested to how well people look on this.
How it evolves over time.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. We're in a different, dynamic, both in terms of the way the social media works and the internet. And also now that there are going to be all these Star Trek shows, the factionalization of the fandom, unfortunate as it may be, in terms of the more aggressive versions of it, it doesn't have to break down among like old versus new anymore, or particular eras. Now it can break down across different shows. Somebody could be super into Picard but hate Discovery or whatever. And I think that's actually kind of cool. It's a little unfortunate when people take it so personally and aggressively.
Yeah.
And it is frustrating to see people do it, like with Lower Decks, for example, where they're dismissing it prior to seeing it. I mean, Lower Decks, we're gonna be starting to review Lower Decks starting next week when it begins. It could be shit. I don't know. It could be terrible, but I hope it's not.
Yeah.
I guess the difference in philosophy is
not total shit.
If you have a bias against new things, a bias in terms of presuming they will be bad versus presuming they will be good. You could argue neither of those is great, but if you lean more towards the presuming it would be good, you might find yourself more open-minded when it comes to these things as opposed to closed-minded. Again, do whatever's going to work for you. But I don't know.
It all comes down to people wanting to feel like they got something on someone else's, and they're like, "Oh, I win. I'm the real one here. You're a poser, and I'm the real one." And,
I know what's good.
Yeah, and it's about calling like the new writers posers. It's just feeling, it's just about sort of grasping on any sort of like feeling of self-worth you can in some instances. It's not about some of it is people unable to sort of feel better by bringing themselves up, so instead they try to feel better by putting others down because they look at it sort of like this kind of like relative scale. It's like, well, I still feel like shit, but if they feel shittier, that must mean I feel good, and I'm sure, and it's just, I don't know, that's sort of, that's pigeonholing a lot of people, so I don't want to. But I think there's a lot of that going on.
I think it's a fair criticism. I think probably it's a minority, probably even a small minority. And again, you have every right to.
Minorities are the loudest too in terms of the minority opinion.
By the way, I'm gonna cut that out. I'm gonna pull that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna pull your lines like minorities are the loudest.
That was.
I'm gonna send it to some choice website.
I felt unfortunate about that as I was saying it. The angriest opinions.
The extreme views are the most interesting. Yes. They get the retweeted the most. People
and that's not even like. And that's what I meant to say. But that isn't even like what I said originally.
That's structural racism right there.
Man.
It's built into us. We can't help it. We apologize. We're working on it. We're trying to get better. Okay, so the next clip. This is the fourth out of 5 of the ones that we had a little controversy around.
Tell you what, when we're done here, I'll take you to the holodeck. We'll run the Qatarian moonrise simulation. It's beautiful.
Beauty is irrelevant. Unless you wish to change the nature of our affiliation.
What do you mean?
I may be new to individuality, but I'm not ignorant of human behavior. I've noticed your attempts to engage me in idle conversation. And I see the way your pupils dilate when you look at my body.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Obviously, you've suggested a visit to the holodeck in the hopes of creating a romantic mood. Are you in love with me, Ensign?
Well, no.
Then you wish to copulate?
No! I mean, I don't know what I mean.
All of these elaborate rituals of deception. I didn't realize becoming human again would be such a challenge. Sexuality is particularly complex. As Borg, we had no need for seduction, no time for single-cell fertilization. We saw a species we wanted and we assimilated it. Nevertheless, I am willing to explore my humanity. Take off your clothes.
Harry Kim pulling out the old clarinet.
Hey, you know where the Borg eat fast food?
At McBorgles.
Burger King.
Yes, it's a fucking Burger King.
Borg Rogers.
They're local Burger King. Borg Rogers.
I win.
Borgdies. Burger Bell. Taco Borg. Taco Borg.
What do you think of that clip? I always thought that clip was funny.
Yeah.
I think some people they referred to it as being cringy.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought, yeah, but that was the joke.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
Right.
The social awkwardness was
It's
the joke.
that Harry Kim is awkward. Yeah.
And partly also, you know, Harry Kim is awkward in this particular scenario, but as the audience, you can sympathize with his awkwardness because it is.
She's an intimidating robot lady,
and she's being very aggressive and sort of stripping away. She's making the point about all this sort of deceit and things that go into human mating, and it forces you a little bit to question it while also being amused by the scene.
Yeah.
So I'm on the same page as you guys, where I thought it was funny too, and I don't find it cringy, but I'm wondering if maybe their cringe was more directed at Seven, not Harry's reaction, but more like on a like sort of a writer's level of like, oh, this will be so clever. She's gonna talk about sex in a technical way and say copulate instead of fuck, and it's trying to make it sound all, you know, smarter than it is or something like that. I don't know. I don't feel that way, but I'm trying to figure what they could mean by cringe as well, because that's why I think it's funny. Mm-hmm. But some people, you know, I think some people, they'll spot that same thing, and then some people are just like, I figured out your joke. I figured out what you were trying to do. And you know what? It's not funny, even though it could be funny, but they're not allowing themselves to think it's funny. Of course, then now I'm projecting opinions onto people, but
that's okay. We're podcasters.
Yeah. I mean, you know, yeah, we gotta have something to say.
We have that right.
We got to say something. So
I also recognize that I think there's a potential legitimate criticism about the idea that when Jerry Ryan was brought on board, when Seven of Nine, the character was created, there's a sex appeal aspect there that's not, you could argue is not necessary. They do make a lot of jokes based on that, and a lot of this joke here is that Harry Kim is quote unquote obviously attracted to her, and the way they basically imply that is partly through his behavior, but also you're just sort of supposed to assume it. So in some ways they're sort of assuming a young male perspective, you know, as the audience member. Right. And I recognize there's legitimacy to that criticism about the character in general. I do think that Jerry Ryan was so skilled and the writers did a very good job with Seven that didn't happen as much. The sexualization of Seven of Nine was sort of an early thing.
When was the episode where that Q kid came around and like took off her clothes? Remember, he was a Q and he zapped in and he zapped her clothes off. There was an episode where she was naked.
Yeah, you're right about that.
And like
was a little later on.
Yeah, and it was just kind of like there was no point. To that happening.
I mean, I won't argue that there was no sexualization of Jerry Ryan or of the character. There was, but that the acting and the writing, I think, blunted some of those criticisms. Where when we have discussed Enterprise in the past, as much as we really like the character of T'Pol, I think there are some issues there in the writing of T'Pol where it's a little bit like this only makes sense in the context of this person's so attractive. Of course, on Enterprise, they also did some of that with Trip and Archer as well. Very rarely read, much to my annoyance.
This was in it was Voyager Q2 is what it was called.
Yeah.
It was Cargo Bay 2. 7 of 9 is working when her clothes vanish. And then Junior is like, talk about perfection. Wow.
Yeah.
So
so yeah, my argument is somewhat undermined.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess you were saying though the point is that Harry Kim was, you know, part of the humor of it is that it is cringe. It is, you're put in that scenario where you're uncomfortable for him, but maybe some people, I can only think that if the cringiness, maybe some people just thought it was exaggerated somehow or something. I don't know. And then you could say that about anything. But combined with the fact that it puts you in an uncomfortable scenario, maybe exaggerating, it's just kind of like you sort of conflate how you're feeling versus
the way. What I'm thinking is if the character of 7 of 9 was more Borgified, as in she was
Borgified.
still looking like a Borg with pale, veiny skin and robot bits
And like
all
that
over.
spotlight coming out of her face. Like.
That maybe Harry would not be having. He would be having a more professional conversation with her, as opposed to the medically required cat suit that she has to wear due to medical reasons. And the medically
that doctor
required
said
size
you gotta
of her
wear
boobs.
that.
Yeah, so I definitely agree that there was some aspect here that only works in the context of sort of over sexualizing the character, and that's fair. That's a fair criticism. But beyond that, I think it's cute, it's funny, and it works with the personalities of both of the characters. Jerry Ryan's aggressive 7 and Harry's perennially socially awkward playing the clarinet.
Oh yeah, that's right. And forgetting he plays the clarinet.
Okay,
he just does that for some reason.
So let's go ahead
what
and
a nerd.
we'll play clip number 5 of 5. This is the last one of the controversial ones. It'll be the last clip for tonight's show. Beep 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 beep.
Beep beep beep.
Oh, Tevrin Crit, pleased to make your acquaintance. More than happy to turn this sack of turf over for the bounty.
Officer, I apologize for this disgusting space homunculus. I'd say you get used to the smell, but you really don't.
Follow me. Do you transfer the latinum to my account, or just give it to me in one big bar? One big bar.
I assume you bought Mr. Mudd from some tall female bounty hunter?
It was a fair deal. The bounty's all mine.
True, but this is not Harcourt Mudd.
My scanner says he is.
He is an android duplicate of Mr. Mudd, thinly skinned with replicant DNA, and programmed to distract you until it's too late for you to demand a refund. Bounty hunters have been showing up all week with these monstrosities. Someone took you for a ride.
Oh, that's excellent. Oh, I'll do that. Oh, very good. Bud, tell him you're real.
If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere.
I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere. If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere. If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere. If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach. Jippers on a beach. Jippers on a beach. If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach. Jippers on a beach. Jippers on a beach.
Classic,
but
or
new.
Soon to be classic.
Yeah, that's from The Escape Artist, one of the episode 5 of the Discovery short treks, or I think they're just calling them short treks now because they're not all Discovery associated. There've been a couple of Picard and animated ones as well. So a lot of people said they weren't fans of the new Harry Mudd. They didn't necessarily specify, the Escape Artist.
On.
I really like the new Harry. I like it. Yeah, I think it. And Rainn Wilson, I think he does a good job with the character. He takes it in a different direction for sure. He directed this short trek, and it's worth watching. I think it's a very well put together story and a great example of sort of a modern use of humor in Star Trek. Although I'd say the same thing about The Trouble with Edward, but I think this one's probably a little bit more broad, has a little bit more broad appeal. But nevertheless, a lot of people not such a big fan of Rainn Wilson's Harry Mudd.
That's unfortunate.
And I mean, people who weren't a fan of it, how many of them do you think were a fan of the other Harry Mudd? I mean,
yeah.
So is that come into play for some people or not? I don't know.
Rainn Wilson plays Harry Mudd as a bit more vicious. I mean, and sneaky, and cruel.
A little less cartoony.
Yeah, the older Harvey, Harold Harry
Harcourt.
He's a little bit more scoundrelly, but less intelligent. It seems. Rainn Wilson's one character seems a little bit brighter.
Well, Zephyr Cochrane.
Zeph.
He was another character
South
that
were
a character that they didn't talk about much through Star Trek, but they had at least after TOS. But it was another one where they originated in TOS, and it's easy to not realize that you had those characters before. So how did they compare? Like the two Cochrans? I mean, I don't know.
They were very different. I mean, they appear to be completely different ages.
Right, yeah.
For example.
Yeah, the timeline on that one's all
that's
screwy,
a good point.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a little odd.
Because that other Cochrane's out on like Alpha Centauri or something.
Yeah, he goes.
Always talking about
hides
Alpha
off.
Centauri.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do?
It's the nearest planet.
There's no Alpha Centaurians.
You don't want to go to Beta Centauri. That place is a shithole.
Oh,
right.
Omega,
It's a fucking shithole.
Omega Centauri. Okay, I was gonna do like a clever tie-in to this joke, but I don't get this joke, and I think I get what they were trying to go for, but I don't get why they did this. So, speaking of Zefram Cochrane, only hardcore Star Trek fans know Zefram Cochrane's real name. ... Oh, I should have done it as a news story. Zefram Cochrane's real name? Well, anyways, only hardcore Star Trek fans know Zefram Cochrane's real name. ... Zefram Katsopoulos. I guess it's a reference to Full House.
What?
It's a reference to Greek actors changing, like westernizing their names to help their.
Maybe that was it. I thought it was like a reference to Jesse Katsopoulos.
Change your name from Greek to Irish.
I think it's.
But you might be right.
I think it's a reference to the unfortunate practice that a lot of actors found was necessary. A lot of actors of Jewish heritage, Greek heritage, Polish heritage,
various Eastern Europeans,
even German heritage at one point found it was going to be beneficial for them to change their name. So that joke is in a certain sense quite a woke joke.
I don't know, because that at the time this joke was probably written, I'm guessing.
Well, the person who wrote it wasn't woke.
No,
they did it by accident.
Katsopoulos,
yeah, that's why the woke will win.
The woke will win
because even the non-woke are accidentally woke from time to time.
That's fucked up.
Sometimes you woke right up.
Because they wrote this joke making a joke about the history of what you just talked about, but that doesn't exist anymore so much in this, well, at least in this implementation.
Yeah.
And then they're making it about something that happens in the future.
They should have made it about Tip O'Neill.
Yeah, they would,
and then nobody would get it.
All right, so let's wrap it up. I hope people have had fun.
Well, wait, real quick. I know we got to wrap this up, but I wanted to point out that there was another meme moment.
Meme moment
in one episode we didn't get to talk about, which is in Deja Q.
Mm-hmm.
That was another meme one where Kirk puts it.
Koik.
With Koik, he puts his head in his hands.
Yes, the Picard facepalm type thing.
Yeah. So I just wanted to list all the Star Trek episodes that were Q puns. They were about Q. There's not that many. There's in the Next Generation. There's Hide and Q. There's Q Who.
Mm-hmm.
Deja Q.
Oh yeah, I heard that one before.
Cupid.
Mm-hmm.
Cupid. Yeah.
True Q. Now in DS9, there's Q less. Voyager, there's the Q and the gray, which I don't know what that's a play on, but I'm sure it is.
The Civil War.
Blue and the gray.
There's a Civil War analogy in
that
there.
made me feel stupid.
No, history of our country.
Yeah. There was Q2, which we talked about.
See, Dan, if there were more statues around, you would have known the history.
Forgetting history,
Maybe
Dan.
They erased the history, so now you can't.
Maybe those lunatics putting Confederate statues up in Ohio have a point.
Man. Shit. Proven.
You're fucking undermining progress.
Stupid ass racist.
So then there's novels.
Oh my God, you're going to the fucking novel.
Yeah, they listed it.
Shit.
The audiobook versions were read by John DeLance. Or is it Delancey?
John Delancey.
I've heard it pronounced John DeLance is the thing. I've heard it pronounced that.
I always pronounce it John Delancey.
I'm just saying I've heard it. So you just don't pretend. I'm just saying, don't pretend I'm dumb. When you say something that somebody doesn't expect you to pronounce it, sometimes people are like, "You said that stupid. That's not how it's pronounced. You're dumb."
He played a molester in Hand the Rock.
Those people are elitist assholes.
I'm just trying to say that I've heard it both ways.
Yes.
Anyways,
Delance.
There's Q in law, Q squared, IQ, and the Q continuum.
That's uncreative.
Yeah, the novels weren't so Q in law. I mean, and one last thing. I have to say
one more thing. Dan is our resident Columbo.
Well, or it's not Columbo. It's
to wrap things up. It's like one more thing.
You're thinking of that other guy, Columbo. What was it, Columbo? Oh, I was thinking of Matlock in terms. Okay, yeah, Columbo.
Matlock wore the white suit.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't thinking of Matlock. I was thinking of Columbo, but I was. Never mind.
Columbo only had one eye.
So
Peter Falk was missing an eye. So he had a fake eye that looked all lazy.
The drummer from Def Leppard only had one arm. The drummer from Def Leppard only had one arm.
Yes.
That's from the Bloodhound Gang.
Yeah, Bloodhound Gang.
In Star Trek, The Final Frontier.
Mm-hmm.
Frontier, yeah. So there was the scene where Scotty is walking around in that ship, and he goes, I know this ship like the back of my hand. Right?
Yes.
And then he runs into the ship and he bumps his head on the ground. And the joke being, of course, like he obviously doesn't know it well enough not to run into some shit that's right in front of him 2 seconds later, you know? So when I was a kid, first of all, I thought he said, like the back of my head. I thought that was the saying. I know it like the back of my head. I thought he said that. And so during
because he had such a funny accent.
Which would imply he didn't know it well.
So...
Right.
And so that's one thing I was confused about as a kid, like hearing that when I heard him say that, I was like thinking, oh, well, that's just trying to say he knows it really well. But then I was thinking, well, you know, with the back of your head, who's going to know the back of their head that well? I don't get it. So I was like, in the theater, I was tapping on my mom's shoulder and I kept saying to her, because I thought he was saying the back of my head and he hit the front of his head. I kept bugging my mom during the movie and I kept saying, but he hit the front of his head. He hit the front of his head. As if, like, he should have hit the back of his head. Right. That would have made more sense. I was like, what's funny? He hit the front of his head. She's just like...
That's when they called the school counselor.
Yeah. I remember vividly, like bugging her about that. And then I remember, like, thinking about the fact, kind of... I've still thought about it until I realized what it actually was. That I thought it was, like, why would you know something like the back of your head well? You wouldn't. It's the back of your head. And then when I found out it was the back of his hand years later, I was like, oh. I mean, he didn't hit his hand. You know, it's not like he hit his hand, but that doesn't matter at this point because it's not about that.
So much angst caused by such a dumb joke.
Well, with the back of your head, you'd think it's part of the head, so you'd have to hit the back of his head.
So I know a lot of people in the audience are saying, I wrote in about that. Yeah, we got a lot of that. That was actually really high up on the list. The problem is audio-wise, it kind of doesn't work so well. But that was a big one. There were a couple other that I thought were worth mentioning that just didn't make the cut. Discovery Season 2, Episode 1, where Linus, the Saurian crew member, sneezes on another crew member.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of for no particularly good reason. Yeah. He turns his head and sneezes. It's not a great joke. And
that's such a weird character.
It is. I mean, the character,
because you're all like, where did this guy come from?
And they're always talking about Saurian brandy and stuff. And I think the previous time you saw a Saurian like that was in Star Trek 1, maybe the motion picture or something. But it's cool that they brought that character in. But the sneeze thing was not funny to begin with, I think. A little forced, and then made worse by the fact that they included it in all the previews. So by the time you watch the episode, it's
you're just kind of like, what the hell's going on here? Like,
and they don't. It's just weird. More than one person sent in something along the lines of, in terms of unfunny moments, they would say, one person said Neelix and anything he ever did or said.
Yeah.
There were a lot of variations on that.
There was one where Tuvok was choking Neelix in like a holodeck program, and that was kind of funny.
Yeah, stress release.
A couple people mentioned when Q asks Worf if he's eat any good books lately.
Hello, Worf. Eat any good books?
Oh, yeah, that was the one with the meme scene where Captain Picard puts his head in his hands, and that's where Q's like, "What do I have to do to prove to you that I'm a human?" And Worf's like, "Die." And it's fucked up. There's one part in Voyager actually that I want to mention that I thought was kind of funny because Voyager actually surprisingly had some funny moments in it.
Yeah.
There's some. Like, Janeway and Paris are incognito on some planet or something, and some kid comes up asking them a question about, like, something relevant to the plot. And then the kid goes, "So, where's the child?" And Paris goes, "We ate him because we are demons and we eat children, and I haven't had my supper yet." And then the boy runs off, and then like Janeway just gives him this like really disappointed look. Like it's really good.
It's like you broke him out of prison, Janeway.
I know. Why does she keep getting disappointed?
Yeah, you don't be disappointed in Paris.
Right.
It's like I'm disappointed that he's even on the fucking show in the first place.
A lot of people mentioned A Fistful of Datas.
As like just controversial,
not controversial, just as bad.
Not, yeah.
Nobody said it was good. Nobody wrote in and said the funniest thing was when Data was dressed as an evil cowboy and a prostitute and the bartender, and
Did it work when Data and Generations said shit when the Enterprise was crashing?
It worked in the theater when I was 14.
Yeah, I remember. That's one of those moments where people around you reacting like it feeds itself, and people react more when other people around them.
It only works
because you're collectively surprised. Like
it only works having been with the character for 7 or 8 8 years, at that point. It works in that context. You have to know Data. Otherwise, it's just somebody saying shit. Any robot could say shit.
Right. Was it funny, the whole scene at the beginning with pushing Worf off and then Data pushing Crusher off? Was that scene worth it at all?
That was awkward. And a couple people mentioned that as being, that was one of the quote unquote controversial ones, but we only got a couple comments on either end of that, where some people thought it was funny. A couple other people thought, not so funny. I don't know. I never really thought it was a great scene. It was kind of weird because it's right at the beginning of the movie. You're used to seeing TNG on the TV screen. Now you're excited to see it in the theater, and it has these upgraded production values, and they're on a sailing ship, on the holodeck, of course, and they're all dressed up in costumes. And the production value's there, but it's almost like they were just like, let's just spend a shitload of money to show that we can.
It's got that guy from Ferris Bueller.
Yes, it does.
Well, what does a Romulan frog use for camouflage?
A croaking device.
Oh, bingo!
I'm getting the hang of this. I'm disappointed in myself somehow for getting that so quickly. Well, long story short, Data comes up a lot. People talk about Data laughing hysterically
and him singing that. Yeah, the laughing was kind of like that was one of those forced laughter things. Yes. But I think he did.
It works because he's Data.
Yeah,
right. But I also get where people are coming from.
There's when he's singing that about this my life forms, you tiny little life forms.
Yes.
Doodle boop boop. He's all beeping that. It's kind of funny when he's beeping his tricorder.
I enjoyed that.
Or his console.
I enjoyed that. But on the other hand, Data comes up a lot when people say unfunny stuff, but he also comes up a whole lot when there is actual funny stuff, particularly some of the longer form thing or things where it's sort of a punchline to the end of the episode or something. Yeah. For example, I think we may have talked about it before when Data does the Ode to Spot.
I was actually just thinking of that right now. I was I was going to bring that up.
Ode to Spot is hilarious.
Yeah.
And it's touching at the same time.
Exactly.
And the only problem with Ode to Spot is that in the context of that episode, Data is giving a reading of this poem that he's written about his cat, and the audience is all bored out of their mind. They think it's stupid and terrible.
Yeah.
And you get what they're trying to go with, but you could tell that the writers could not. Data was supposed to have written a bad poem, and he didn't, because the writers wrote this brilliant, hilarious poem about Data's cat. So the scene, in some ways, doesn't work because it's supposed to be a terrible poem, but it's not. It's a really amazing poem. But anyway, so Data's ends up on both sides of the ledger.
You could have a whole episode about Data humor.
Yes,
let's do that.
All right. And just very briefly, because we'll close up shop here. First of all, next week we're going to be talking about Lower Decks, so keep an eye out for that. We're hoping it's good, but who knows? Maybe not. We'll see how that goes. It's the first foray into animated Star Trek.
It seems that some people have already decided it's going to be a
million years. And as an example of that, I'm not going to read this whole thing because it's just awful. But this guy, we got all these wonderful comments from people, and some people are feel really strongly about Neelix or whatever, but that's cool. Most people,
it's understandable.
Most people are awesome and passionate, and then you get somebody like this who says, quote, "In my opinion, they gotta stop. Lower dregs, and now another lame cartoon as well on Nick that's called Prodigy. I don't know the details, but I do know the main characters will be an African-American female, because, 2020 politics. They'd get sued by daytime TV otherwise."
Daytime TV.
As you can see in Lower Dregs, the mains, I guess main characters, are dark tone females, acting as stupid as Patrick Star. I presume that's from SpongeBob SquareFish.
Oh, is that what I didn't understand?
I think that's, I don't know. It's references. While I don't know white supremacist references.
Yeah, it's the starfish.
Acting as stupid as Patrick's. Okay, so dark tone females acting as stupid as Patrick Star while simultaneously berating subservient, for some reason, all-white loser-style males that are, of course, lower than them in rank. It's just not real life.
It's just not real.
This country is sick with indoctrinated people. Real Trek.
It's just not real life, man.
Real Trek or forget it. And no, it's not anti-female or racist. I'm just making a point about how basic and stupid everything is getting. Guy goes on for a bit longer, but the point being that just in case it's unclear to people out there, this guy's a racist. This is a racist person. This
not
is not
just that, he doesn't like women.
Yes, this is
and he can't even admit that he's racist because at the end he's like, I'm not racist.
This is not
but...
racist. I'm just talking about dark-toned females lording over subservient white men, and that's not real life.
He's talking about an animated character that's drawn to look like a human female and might have a dark skin
on a TV show that's about an incredibly diverse future in which we have aliens with bumpy heads and multiple penises and stuff.
I don't know about real life, but Star Trek has plenty of admirals that are women, and they outrank everybody.
And so I think it's uncontroversial, right? To say, like, okay, if you're somebody who doesn't like Captain Janeway, I'm not going to say you're anti-women. If you don't like Captain Sisko or Michael Burnham for one reason or another, that doesn't mean that you are approaching things from a racist perspective. If you are on the internet writing people, telling them that it's dark-toned females, and subservient men, and how that's not realistic, that's a racist statement.
He didn't say anything about Sisko. He just doesn't like black women.
Yeah,
and they do that. But I mean, I see people complain, like, for example, in video games or something and movies. But I've seen where the main character is gay or something, and they're like, why did they make him gay? What does that have to do with the plot? They just shoehorned it in there, and it's like, well, what does them being straight have to do with the plot?
Exactly.
It's like so easy to set these people off, and they think that like they're somehow like you're ramming something down their throats, and it's like, no,
we're just putting it there.
We're just this is just how life is, and it's like, oh, I'm so offended by that way of life. It's like
you're trying to tell me what my life should be like or something.
You're ramming down. What he said something about ramming down your way of life.
Indoctrinated
people. Just like you're saying that, like we're ramming our. Like it was
so
nonsense.
insecure. It's such a high amount of insecurity going on that something that is not like any kind of offensive maneuver becomes an offense. Like
exactly.
It's like someone could just be walking and suddenly you think they're attacking you.
There was nothing.
It's like, dude, I wasn't even thinking about you.
There's nothing provocative. There should be nothing provocative about having an African American female lead. Like,
it's completely
like
absurd.
I said, to say it's like, oh well, it's not part of the plot. It's shoehorned in. It's like it's not part of the plot. Is it part of the plot whenever someone's straight, whenever someone's white? You know,
those are the defaults. Those are the quote-unquote defaults. That's what their perspective is. Their perspective is, I'm the default.
Their perspective is that's the way it should be.
Discovery's got like a couple of guys kissing sometimes. Oh, big deal.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like that's real life. That's what happens in real life is men are kissing each other. Like, it happens.
It's going to happen in a couple minutes once we close up this podcast.
Oh yeah, over that tech manual.
We're going to look at the tech manual, and we're going to
roll some. We're going to have some D&D dice.
It's going to
and
get
then use that to pick the page number of the technical manual, and we're going to make out.
We don't even have to use real dice because I have a couple of dice rolling programs.
I got a stack of dice.
Phone.
Well, then what are we going to put in our hands?
We'll report about that next week, folks. So in the meantime, hope you enjoyed this overlong episode about comedy in Star Trek as we're leading into our coverage of Lower Decks starting next week. So meet us again next Saturday. It's going to be cool. In the meantime, where can they contact us, Dan? Hello, computer.
Feedback. Feed bag. Speaking of what happens after you eat a feed bag, what did Spock find in Kirk's toilet?
A Vulcan log pinch.
Captain's log.
A pinched off log of. Oh, his captain's log.
Yeah, but I liked what you were throwing down with that
captain's log is good.
With that pinching out a loaf thing. So
captain's log is the
Vulcan log.
Captain's log is the most parsimonious punchline. Mine was going in
pinching
a
log.
Vulcan log. Butthole pinch. It just pinches you on the butthole, and all the shit flies out, and then it gets beamed away.
Transporter technology.
Feedback at It's Got Star Trek.
They turn it into Earl Grey tea. Earl Grey hot.
Earl Grey tea.
Some hot lunch.
What about on social media? People like social media. I can see pictures.
At It's Got Star Trek on Twitter or Instagram.
Sure. Yeah. And Facebook / It's Got Star Trek.
You can look it up on Facebook as well.
@ It's Got Star Trek.
You can find us on YouTube.
Yes. Well done, Jesse. YouTube.
Exciting visuals.
Yeah. Well, not really. It's just a picture. It's just a static picture for the most part. Although we do have some highlights out there. So if you want to send some highlights, go to YouTube, send some highlights around to your friends.
I'll take the highlights and you take the low lights.
Yeah, that was some of our highlights. I would qualify as lowlights. They're still entertaining.
Klingons around Uranus.
Yep, and with that pronunciation,
what was
works
it about?
really well.
Like on Enterprise, how you can go out to Uranus and like
I think it was Neptune.
6 minutes. It was a Neptune.
Yeah, they say Neptune, but it makes you think Uranus.
I know it's like it's out there too
in your brain because you know Archer
what's
was
out
thinking
there.
that,
It's
too.
you're right.
All right, so that's the contact info. The website's itsgotstartrek.com, and the next week Lower Decks. So let's see what happens with
Lower
that, folks.
dregs.
Don't try not to be racist in the meantime.
No.
Have a good night. Bye bye.
There was a young lady from Venus whose body was shaped like a...
Captain to security, come in.